Well, thanks so much for joining us tonight. We really appreciate it. We really appreciate the opportunity to share some of the things that we've learned along the way from some of our mentors about passive investing and why wealth is so important. I think sometimes Americans can maybe feel a little weird talking about money and why wealth is not just this thing for a privileged few, but something that's a moral imperative for absolutely everyone to have the beautiful life that you can lead on the other side of wealth and all the amazing impacts you can make once you have it.
Yeah, absolutely. Our goal for tonight is to be a little more workshop style, a little less sort of lecturing and teaching style. Don't get me wrong, there's plenty of learning to be had, but asking you a lot of questions that, our hope is that you're in a place where you can grab a pen and paper or a Word document on your computer and really reflect on these and really make this a personalized thing for yourself. If you're driving or getting dinner or taking care of the kids or still in the hospital or something like that, just think through them as we go through these questions and allow your mind to really move the needle for you in your life. You really only have to get one thing in our time here tonight that really moves something in your life, that moves you toward more wealth in many of the various domains in wealth. So let's make this interactive. Please introduce yourself in chat. Tell us where you're from. Tell us about what you're hoping to get out of tonight. I read all of those as we go through our presentation. And then as we're asking the questions, I encourage you to be active in chat, to declare your answers out into the world, to share them with each other, to be reading the chat yourself and saying, hey, that's a good idea that someone else said, and adding it, to your list. We learn in community, right? We are the average of the 5 people we spend the most amount of time with. And so our hope tonight is that we're elevating everyone together in this community power hour.
Awesome. Let's dive in.
Good to see everyone. Hello, Billy. Hello, Timothy, Joseph,
Some
Mira,
familiar faces,
Lauren.
some new people.
Yeah, Hannah. I think we went to medical school together.
Small world.
Hello, Nancy. Good to see everyone. Let's get started. Shall we share our screen? Okay. Share sound? Okay.
All right.
All right. We are sharing our screen for everyone. Hopefully you can see that now. And let's dive in. You want to take us
So
away, Nicholas?
you can go to blackswanteam.com/net worth right now, blackswanteam.com/net worth. That'll give you an opportunity to download some tools. We're going to dig into how to use those tools here in just a few slides, but go ahead and go to blackswanteam.com/net worth and you can check out some of those tools right now. Our usual business disclaimer here that we might give you something that looks like investment advice, but we are wrong. We are not professionals. This is just entertainment, and you should talk to your trusted advisors, your CPA, accountant, attorney, whatever people you trust that are licensed in that thing. My wife and I are licensed in various ways. My wife's a licensed physician. I'm a licensed real estate agent, but neither of us are licensed attorneys, accountants, or CFPs. And just a financial disclaimer, we might talk about some pro formas. You are encouraged to create your own models, do your own due diligence when considering any investment. A little bit about us. So my wife and I get the privilege to lead an integrated life, leading a really beautiful life we're going to share a little bit with you about tonight. And that includes over $1/3 billion in assets under management. We actually just closed on Boulder Ridge Townhomes yesterday. So it's 112 townhomes is a $20 million deal in Fund 3, Fund 4. And fingers crossed, we've got 2 offers that went out today on 2 different deals. So it's been a busy time for us, and that number is about to grow here. We've raised over $75 million in capital. If you're interested in learning more about that, you can go to securefreedomfund.com. We've done a little bit of real estate sales. This is something that we don't talk about as much with this group, but it's a big part of how we put food on the table, how we generate income and wealth for the people on our team. We've done over $180 million of real estate sales for one of the top 1/3 of 1% of real estate sales teams in Keller Williams. I just got done hanging out with Gary Keller at Keller Williams family reunion last 2 weeks ago now. Absolutely love getting to hang out with GK. And then we do a little bit of ground up construction. So got to visit this here last Sunday. We've got a new building almost done coming out of the ground. So about 60 days left before we start getting our certificate of occupancy there. That's an $11.5 million project that's in progress right now. And we've got 5 kids because we like to do everything at scale. So that's just a little bit of us. Just in case this is your first time here, why the things that we share have a little bit of experience, a little bit of knowledge or wisdom behind them. Not too much, but just why you might want to listen to some things that we have to share today. And just a little advertisement here for the Black Swan Real Estate Secure Freedom Fund. This is a 10% fixed rate of return preferred equity vehicle for new deals that we're acquiring here in 2025. We've seen a lot of demand for this. We've got a bunch of folks on the wait list. You can jump on the wait list right now at securefreedomfunds.com. We expect this to be open for funding probably the next week or two. With the activity we've had lately, it's been a very busy few weeks for us. You can go to securefreedomfund.com. And of course, real estate, real life. This is our it's unlike any conference you've ever been to before. So we do some teaching and speaking, kind of like what you're going to get tonight. We bring in some pretty incredible speakers. We've got just an incredible speaker lineup available. You can go to realestatereallife2025.com. If you'd like to see the assets that you're investing in, we get on a bus and we tour those. We do some breath work and guided meditation. There is all of our team is there. You get to meet the property managers and leasing agents and stuff that take care of the buildings that you own if you're one of our treasured investors. So that's September 11 to 14 this year, 2025 here in Rochester. Come check it out. Go to Real Estate Real Life, RERL2025.com. I feel like I'm a radio DJ into these spots here. Okay, so without further ado, we're going to dive in. So we've got a bunch of prompts for you, a bunch of questions. And as Elaine just said, as we're going through, go ahead and put some of your answers into chat. What is wealth? How do you define wealth? How do you measure it? Do you want to be wealthy? I guess I sure hope so. If you're at this webinar with us here tonight, why do you want to be wealthy? What would be different? What would be better or worse, I suppose? What would your life look like if you were wealthy? Go ahead and just jot that down on a pen and paper or however you like to take notes. There's going to be a lot of these questions we're going to want a little journey together tonight. And feel free to share those in chat. We can interface a little bit.
And I think when I think about wealth, I think about being unabashedly wealthy, right? You are probably familiar in our typical Western culture of modern day. There's this like craving to be wealthy, but then it's also very sort of hush hush, and it's we sort of send insults toward people who are wealthy and they're out of touch and those sorts of things. And so we kind of have this like duality in our minds, right? And I see that present in people sort of over and over and over again, where they will maybe self-sabotage their wealth or their growth. They will maybe sort of purposefully deny themselves opportunities to grow, sort of thinking that money is greedy or that's not what the purpose of work is or those sorts of things. And I would encourage you to think about what would it feel like to you to be unabashedly wealthy, to claim it as your right, to say, I, as a human being, should experience everything that life has to offer, all of the gifts of my creator or chance or whatever it is that you believe in, and to be an example for others of what a wealthy life could look like, both in terms of financial wealth, and we're going to talk about all the types of wealth tonight, and all of the other forms of wealth in life. So just kind of think about that. That question there, like, do you want to be wealthy? On first glance, you might think like, of course, like, what are you talking about? Everyone wants to be wealthy, but kind of think about maybe how that duality is coming up for you, or how maybe it's come up in your family or your culture or your workplace or your profession, and kind of sit with that and see if you can make some progress on that, where you can claim your desire to be unabashedly wealthy in all of the domains of your life, without shame, with joy, with an excitement to experience all of these things and to be an example to others for what is possible.
Absolutely. I grew up very poor, so did Elaine. I remember when I was young, everyone wanted to have certain displays of wealth. We had to be careful not to display too much wealth, because you'd become a victim of theft or assault, because people would be jealous of what precious little wealth you had. Crab pot syndrome, how if you have a pot of crabs, the crabs will pull other crabs trying to escape from the pot out. And I think the people who grow up in middle class or wealthy kind of backgrounds, they have the exact same kind of psychology in different ways. To put it into a different context here, we've got this really beautiful I don't know, memory to share with you. So we're looking people of faith were voracious students of all faiths. So we had these friends, the Freeds. They were Orthodox Jews, and we're not Orthodox Jews, but we would just go hang out with them on the Sabbath. I recommend go hang out with some Orthodox Jews next Sabbath. It is the coolest thing ever. No cell phones, no technology whatsoever. Just hanging out and just
Hmm.
talking to people. No
Hmm.
work allowed is the most beautiful culture. I always would accidentally turn the light off in their bathroom though, and they were not allowed to turn the lights back on, so they would just have to use the bathroom in darkness for us. I felt so bad. But they would have this ceremony where we'd sit at the table with them, and they would say this blessing, and they would have this cup of wine. They'd have an empty cup with a saucer underneath it, and they'd have a pitcher of wine, and they would fill the cup to overflowing, which is like kind of a viscerally displeasing thing. You never ever deliberately overfill a cup and then keep filling it as it's actively overflowing, as they would give thanks to God, to Yahweh, for all of the many blessings that he had given them, that they had so much that they could share with their friends, and how everything they needed had been given to them, and that they had a moral imperative to let their cup be filled so that it might overflow, so that they might have so much abundance that they could share it with everyone in their life. And they would do this every single week. Every single week, they would get together and just express abundant, literally overflowing gratitude, filling up this cup until it overflows, and celebrating how they have a moral imperative to be wealthy, to enjoy all the gifts that they've been given, so that they might share those gifts with other people. Is so impactful to me, and that was the
Hmm.
first thing I thought of as we were kind of preparing for this time together. Like they were people that were they lived very basic lives, incredibly simple lives, and yet they were probably some of the wealthiest people I've ever known.
Hmm. Hmm. Absolutely. Such a beautiful story to share. And thinking about that, right? That kind of going back to what I was talking about on the previous slide, like we've been conditioned to believe that if you pour until your cup overflows, that that's wasteful or
Mm.
greedy, right? When in fact it's not, when in fact it's a celebration of all that you've been given and that you have so much that you can share with others. Thinking of wealth as tremendous abundance that you can and should experience so that you get to have that lived experience and so that you can share it with as many other people as possible and have as much impact as possible. And that's ultimately what we're going to work toward, impact freedom, as we go through our time tonight.
So if abundance doesn't do it for you, let's try a little bit of very real fear. Warren Buffett says, if you don't find a way to make money while you sleep, you will work until you die. That's just the fact. That's all there is to it. You cannot work your way to wealth. I'll say it a second time. You cannot work your way to wealth. Wealth is something that is only achieved through passive income, through the ability to earn money while you sleep. You have a certain cost of living. We're going to define that here in just a second. And once you know that, you know exactly what your passive income needs to be for you to figure out what wealth might look like quantitatively. We're talking about some emotional things here, so this has some salient, some impact, because we want you to make a small or big change in your life tonight while we're here together. But what does wealth look like for you quantitatively and qualitatively? Because if abundance doesn't do it for you, if filling your cup to overflowing, so you can't share your table with the people in your life, doesn't motivate you, just know that you will work until you die if you don't. Some chat there. How is wealth measured? What is wealth? The ability to help others without strain, freedom to
Mm-hmm.
pursue my passions, freedom from debt, not having to consider price tags, buying back time to take care of myself mentally, physically, spiritually. Some beautiful sentiments to share there. Wealth is an abundance of money and time. Wealth is health, financial stability, a home full of love and respect, having faith in God. I grew up in a lower middle class. We did not have $20 in the safe. Childhood home was foreclosed, bankruptcy, divorce. Became an MD to help people be financially secure. First MD in the family. Don't want my future children to go through that. So I can tell you that some of the people I admire most are people that experience extraordinary hardship in their youth.
Mm-hmm.
That's a privilege that my wife and I both shared, because we find it takes that trauma, that's like such a loaded term in today's culture. Trauma can be a healthy thing. Post traumatic growth. I'm trying to remember the quote. It's only those who are broken by this world that heal it, or something
Mm-hmm.
like that.
Mm-hmm.
So I celebrate your trauma. I celebrate your incredible story overcoming that. And I tell you, only the crazy people who think that they could change the world, the ones who ultimately do so. So good on you. Um, let's talk for just a second about how wealth is measured. So wealth is measured in time. I'm sorry, I just skipped a slide there. I hope I didn't. I hope I didn't give away the punchline or something like that here. Some people might say that wealth is measured with a fancy house, a fancy car, going on big fancy trips. They might look at the amount of money that they have in their bank account, mistaking that for net worth. They might look at the amount of money that they have in their wallet. I know some people who like to carry around cash in their wallet so they can feel very wealthy. I try really hard to carry around a lot of money in my wallet so I can give it away. That's called wham, or walking around money. It feels great to give money away. People who say that money can't buy happiness just haven't given enough away. Um, in our industry in private equity, people measure wealth in number of doors, number of units, assets under management. A lot of times people talk about cash flow. If they've got like a portfolio of single family homes or something like that, go ahead and pepper into chat how you might measure wealth.
Yeah, absolutely. Think about, what that definition is for you personally. And maybe think about kind of how that definition has evolved for you over time. And then we'll take sort of 20 seconds here and then continue on.
Like the definition there of having FU money. And by the way, one of our coaches is a I don't know, a very interesting executive coach. He coaches like Fortune 500 executives. He does this kind of visualization exercises where he takes them to the top of a mountain where they can shout something, so loud the whole world could hear it. And he says the most common thing they say is FU. It's a big old chip on their shoulder that's taken them to that place of incredible achievement. And he says maybe you should try considering F it, So instead of having FU money, have F it money. We believe that wealth is measured in time. Wealth is measured in time. And this is not an abstract thing. This is not a touchy-feely kind of thing. This is simply how many days can you work, or I'm sorry, can you live without working? How many days can you live without working? So these are simple calculations to make that we beseech you, we request, we implore you, make these calculations tonight. They may
Mm-hmm.
they may
Mm-hmm.
hurt just a little bit, and we'll look at that here in just a second. If you want to figure out how much your net worth is, that could be an exact calculation. For the purposes tonight, make it an approximate calculation. You probably know approximately how much your house is worth and how much you owe on it, how much money you have in your retirement accounts, how much money you have in the bank. We're going to get into that in just a second. And you probably know within 10 or 20%, just off the top of your head, what your net worth might be. Then you need to do a simple calculation of what your burn rate is. Your burn rate, and your burn rate is how much money do you spend in any given month or any given year to live, to survive, to take care of yourself and the people that depend on you, your partner, your children, the people that you get the privilege to support, and then subtract from that your passive income. And you may not have very much of that right now. And if your conclusion from tonight is one of painful revelation that you need some passive income, well, great. We're glad that we've had the opportunity to serve you to help you see that. But you just take your net worth, divide by your burn rate minus your passive income, and you get the number of months that you can survive without working. So let's say that you had a $1 million net worth, you spend 500K per year, and you make 100K per year in passive income. You do $1 million divided by 500 minus 100. That is 2.5 years of wealth. You could, last 2.5 years without working and sustain your current burn rate. Does that make sense to everyone so far?
It's a very different way of thinking about wealth, right? It's very different than, say, like the 4% withdrawal. It's very different than saying like someone has to have a very, very high net worth, because you can modulate any of the three variables in this equation. You can modulate how much stored wealth you have in terms of net worth. You can modulate your burn rate, which is how much you spend in a year, and you can modulate your passive income. So it's a very different way of thinking about wealth. And we really like it because you can think about how can you optimize each of those variables. And you'll see as we go through the next several slides here, you'll see how burn rate and passive income are much more important than net worth, which is kind of opposite of what's typically taught in financial circles. In financial circles, there's really a push to grow your net worth, really celebrate when you hit that millionaire status, kind of keep going, keep going. And I'm elated to see in our culture a little bit of a shift, right? With Bill Perkins, who wrote Die with Zero, to say, we often die with our peak wealth. Like, how sad is that, right? We don't get to enjoy our wealth or even see the impact that our wealth will or could create in the lives of our children, our grandchildren, the charities that we want to support. And so instead of thinking of net worth as the goal that we're chasing, we think of these three variables and, more importantly, the relationship to each other and how that creates days and years of wealth. So think about how many days can you live without working? And then the way to calculate that is just jot down a number. It doesn't have to be perfect tonight. We just want you to be thinking about these things. Go back tomorrow and sharpen your pencil with those numbers. But what's your net worth? What's your burn rate, which is how much you are spending per year? How much annual passive income do you have? And then you'll be able to do this calculation to calculate how much time you could live without working at all.
And we're not going to go through this tool in depth. Hopefully, it's relatively self-explanatory. Elaine, in her coaching program, I know y'all deep dive on this on your calls, but just we've got some example buckets that you could put in there. So your checking account, savings, the value of your car, student loans, personal mortgage, car loans, credit card debt that you might have. If you've got some real estate assets, you could put those over here in these columns on the right. Your retirement accounts, and you just add that up and you get your overall net worth. And you should not be like logging into online portals or anything in this exercise. This needs to be just an approximate number, and to the nearest 10, 20, 30%, what's your net worth right there. And to get that, I just went to our website, blackswanteam.com
/net worth.
/net worth. And I clicked on net worth tracker. And then we've got our burn rate calculator. And you've maybe seen a net worth tracker before. You've probably not seen a tool like this before. And these are all tools that we kind of made up for our own purposes. In this case, you've got your active income, and you can just kind of pencil in. We put in kind of monthly numbers here. I find that's more emotionally impactful, or maybe motivates me to make incremental improvements faster. If you track something more often, you get more chances to change it, to improve it. If you track something once a year, it's not quite as motivating to change, and you only get one chance per year to improve it. So these were our after-tax monthly wages. Here's our passive income on our one lonely rental property in 2011. We had a YouTube channel back in the day, and then here's
we still have that YouTube channel.
It's a different YouTube channel these days, and makes less money, but it makes a lot of other people money who consume that content. But 401k that was accruing just a little bit of interest. So we had about 5,800 per month of active income and 650 per month of passive income. By the way, this is from October 2011. These are the real numbers, y'all.
This is when we got married.
This is real talk.
We merged our finances.
And this was only 14 years ago. So we went from this to a third of a billion in AUM in 14 years. You overestimate what you can do in a year, but you really underestimate what you can do in a decade or 14 years. In terms of expenses, we've got our mortgage, student loans, utilities, car payment, phone, life insurance, health insurance, daycare. I put 0 for daycare in there just to I don't even want to think about what that daycare payment is these days for our 5 kiddos. And then you can see I just put in approximately 2,000 for like food and cost of living expense. You don't have to be precise here. You can spend time to become more precise. But the main thing you need to get to is this net cash flow. So just taking your total income less your total expenses, and you get to $602 a month. We were coming out ahead a whopping $602 per month per year, or per month. I don't think I need to explain how potentially demoralizing that is. We're barely treading water, right? And this is the situation a lot of Americans are in. And it does not matter what your income level is. What profession do you think is the most likely to declare bankruptcy in the United States? You'd think it would maybe be a low income profession. It's physicians. Physicians are the most likely profession to declare bankruptcy in the United States, and they're followed by all the other highest income professions. Lawyers are shockingly likely to declare bankruptcy. So it does not matter what your income is. As Dave Ramsey would say, you cannot out earn your stupidity, and you have to be real with yourself. So it was helpful for us to see that we were just barely treading water at that time. And then look at your burn rate. So if you drop out your active income, our burn rate was 5,200 per month, negative 5,200 per month. Our net worth at the time was actually pretty decent. We owned a couple of homes, and we had a pretty successful pair of careers and a car business. So we had a decent amount of net worth. That gave us about 61 months of wealth, or 5 years of wealth at that time, because our burn was relatively modest compared to our net worth. I would say that we were probably in the top 1% of wealth, according to like our age group at that time. Although when our peers looked at us, they probably did not think we led a very like wealthy looking life. We had probably just a weird looking life. We didn't go out drinking and partying on the weekends. Instead, Elaine was studying for med school while working like two side gig jobs, and we had a rental property. And I was like always fixing cars in the driveway for some crazy reason. People probably thought we were drowning in debt or something like that. No, we saw the vision of the future, and we saw how we could create wealth. We could create passive income that could one day snowball into the thing we created today. And this is what it looked like. These are the exact numbers from October 2011. If you have questions or anything, go ahead and pepper them into chat. Someone said, "Sorry, I have to deliver a baby. Please keep in touch." That's cracking me up here.
I love babies,
Yeah,
so that warms my heart.
yeah. I hope that you're using this tool right now. I hope you're diving in and putting together these numbers. Does anyone want to share what their wealth is? Again, we live in a culture that sometimes feels shame about money, and here's your opportunity to do something
In
uncomfortable and
terms of
dispel that shame.
years of wealth, right?
Yeah.
Because that number is agnostic, right? Of your net worth, of your burn rate, of your passive income. We're going to share a fun story a little later today about a young person we helped achieve financial freedom at just the age of 19. So again, because you can modulate any of those three variables, you could have a very low burn rate, right? You could be living a modest life, but have a lot of freedom because of that. You could have a very high burn rate, but maybe you've worked hard to generate passive income over time. And so it offsets there. So curious to see, how many years of wealth do you have? And if you're able to calculate that and start thinking about that different way of thinking about wealth, and share that in the chat. One of the questions was, for real estate in the net worth calculator, do you put the equity or total value? How does the mortgage play into it? So on the net worth calculator, you'll put the value and then the debt, and then the equity will be automatically calculated for you. Because as each month, as you pay down the mortgage, your debt will go down, or maybe you refinance and your debt goes up. And then over time, that property should grow in value. So we, for example, in our personal net worth sheet, we update the value of our single family home portfolio once per year in our net worth calculator, but we update our debt every single month as we're paying down the principal. And so that equity is automatically calculated and it's growing over time. Very, very good question there.
So as you play around with this tool, you're going to notice a few things. When we calculate your wealth, active income is not in the equation, which if you're a high income earner, and if you're on this webinar, there's a decent chance you're a high income earner. Maybe that feels a little insulting to you or something like that. A lot of people, their salary, their base compensation, that's like kind of a core piece of their identity. And we encourage you to divorce yourself from that concept. That's something that will not serve you when it comes to achieving real wealth, when it comes to achieving real financial freedom. It's interesting because burn rate is the most obvious thing that I'd say people target first. And it's always easier to cut expenses than it is to increase your passive income. I'd say it's probably 10 times easier to cut your expenses at first. You can't really get down to zero, but there's probably a lot of expenses you can cut. That's one of the most obvious things that people go after.
And I would encourage you, like, there's probably some people that hear that and think like, well, I don't want to live an austere life, or I want to have a bigger life. And that's what we want for you too, right? We want you to have the biggest life you could possibly imagine. But if there's a short period of time where you can rein in your spending from a very empowered place so that you can snowball the amount of passive income that you're able to create by investing those dollars instead of spending those dollars, that will get you freedom so much faster. So we've always gamified it. We would have every February, gosh, what was the name of it that we
just February
the February challenge every February, because it's the shortest month of the year, so it made it a little bit more palatable. We would try to spend the least amount of money. So back in 2011, when we were spending like $6,000 per month, we tried to spend $1,000 per month. So we would eat, all the canned food out of the pantry and not go out to eat and go for bike rides instead of going to the movie theater, and just all of these fun things. And yes, there was a period where we were, perhaps depriving ourselves of some things, but we were also exposing ourselves to the empowerment that we could have control over how much we spent, that we could find plenty of enjoyment in all sorts of other things. So think about cutting your burn rate from a place of empowerment. Even today, probably about once every 6 months, I sort of look around and I look at our budget and I say, what are the things where we're just kind of getting soft on? We're just sort of getting lazy. Are we We're not really optimizing those dollars. We're not really enjoying those dollars. And how can I keep reining in our burn rate so that we can extend our wealth as long as possible? So that's how I encourage you to think about cutting back your burn rate is gamify it, make it fun. Think about how it can open your life to all of the enjoyments in life that don't cost any money, and think about how it's a very empowering thing for you because it allows you to invest those dollars instead of spending those dollars. The next thing you'll see in this equation, right? So we've got net worth divided by burn rate minus passive income, and burn rate minus passive income is in parentheses. So you do that part first. So you get that number, and then net worth divided by that number. The next thing you'll see is that passive income is the most important factor, right? Passive income is the most important factor. Active income isn't in the equation at all. Let me say that again. Active income isn't in the equation at all. You can't cut your burn rate to zero. Sometimes cutting the burn rate isn't fun, right? We want you to have a roof over your head. We want you to have food on the table. We want the kids to be in school or childcare or whatever it is. We want you to have clothing, those sorts of things. So you must have passive income in order to be able to support the burn rate that you want to have the roof over your head and the vacations that you want to go to and the lifestyle things that you want to have. Passive income is the most important factor in the entire equation. And then next up is that net worth is surprisingly useless. And even as we were kind of preparing our slides and stuff, I said, well, Nick, we check our net worth every single month. We check our net worth kind of right around the 15th of the month. That's when, we do a lot of real estate investing. So that's when rents have come in, mortgages have gone out. Things are sort of the most steady at that time of the month. And we do that so that we have a sense of how are we earning the most amount of income? What are the things that are increasing our liquidity? What are the things that are increasing our net worth? What are the things that are increasing our passive income? So the exercise of checking net worth once per month is more to get an overall assessment of our wealth picture, because net worth itself is surprisingly useless. If you have no passive income, right? If you have put a zero in that equation, then your years of wealth is just net worth divided by burn rate. Well, you have to have a very, very, very large net worth to truly be financially free, right? If you're, say, in your 40s or 50s and you'd like to, completely step back from work and you're planning an average lifespan or a more than average lifespan, you would need to have a staggering net worth, right? In order to have enough net worth to cover all of your burn rate. So the thing that sort of most people kind of latch onto, right? The kind of the metric that people kind of carry in their heads of like, oh, I've hit millionaire status or multimillionaire status, or, kind of chasing that certain net worth targets. It's important because it gives you kind of a lay of the land, and it helps you to assess what are the things that are moving in your financial life, but it's surprisingly useless, right? And if you kind of think through these three variables again, I think you're starting to see how burn rate and passive income are within your control, and they're the most important variables. And net worth is more of like a store of wealth, but you can either kind of soak up all of your net worth very quickly if you have no sources of passive income coming in, or you can extend your net worth for as long as possible if you have a lot of passive income coming in. And you can even get to a situation where your passive income, say on an annual basis, is more than your burn rate. And then at that point, you are infinitely wealthy. Let me say that again. When your passive income, let's say on an annual basis, exceeds your annual burn rate, you are infinitely wealthy, because instead of kind of using up a portion of your stored wealth each year, you will be inevitably adding to your stored wealth each year. And that's what we think of as infinite wealth. When there's like no way that you would start to deplete your net worth, because your passive income covers all of your expenses and more.
So here's a comical story to drive that point home. So there's a member of our team, Sam. He's 19 years old, and he was just a phenomenal student. He just did everything that we told him to do. We told him to go out and buy a single family home, to find a very distressed single family home that he could get at a low price, do some renovations on it. He was unbelievably resourceful in doing those renovations. We support like lots of causes one of them being a homeless shelter. And he went to the homeless shelter and got a bunch of homeless people and just kind of paid them day wages to go renovate the property, did it for pennies on the dollar, and like made the world a little better place along the way. And when he was done, he had this like fantastically cash flowing one single family home. And he had an extraordinarily low cost of living, and he cranked down that cost of living even more based on this exact coaching here until he had gotten his burn rate down to about $4,000 per year. That's not per month, that's per year. And he had about 5,000 in passive income per year from that one single family home. And he said, okay, I am now financially free. I think his net worth was negative at the time because he had some student loans that he had accrued, and those exceeded the equity he had in that home. So despite having a negative net worth, he was financially free. And he spent some time with us, learned a lot. We took him to a Tony Robbins event. Then he felt so inspired to serve. He joined the military, moved to Japan, and he still owns that home today and
Mm-hmm.
has like $100,000 or $150,000 of equity in that one single family home. He's one of the wealthiest people that I know. He spent no money his whole time in the military. Military paid all of his cost of living, and he continued to invest all the money that he was making in the military. I'm not sure what his net worth is today. It's got to be like $500,000 when he's 22 or 23 years old, and he's still got that one single family home. So I hope you enjoy the humor of that story and the poignancy that your wealth, the amount of time that you can live without working, it has very little to do with your net worth. So, what does your life? Sorry, we're having trouble skipping slides tonight. I
Yeah,
don't know why.
our
The PowerPoint
our
does not
slideshow
want
is
to.
being very odd. So
Yeah,
sorry for the little blips in between as we're switching slides.
yeah. So, what does your life look like when you reach this infinite wealth? That might seem like kind of a weird concept for you if you hadn't thought about it. And we are a student of patterns, so we love spending time with successful people, with people who are a few steps ahead of us on the journey. People who are older than us, people who are more successful than us. And what we found is pretty universally, for decades of your life, usually you trade your time for money. You earn a wage. You're a student where you're actually paying to learn, and then you hopefully earn a valuable education that lets you go and get a job, and you have a salary or an hourly pay rate, and you're literally trading your time for money. But then at some point there's a fulcrum moment, and it could be when you're 50 years old, 60 years old, hopefully younger rather than older, when all of a sudden you have more money than time, and you start ferociously buying back your time with money. Maybe you hire someone to do cleaning in your home, or hire someone to cut your lawn. You buy conveniences that save you time because you realize that time is the great equalizer. It's the most precious resource that we all have. The homeless people that we serve in the shelter, and Elon Musk and us, we all have the same number of minutes in a day. It's merely a question of how effectively we use those minutes, and whether or not we leverage them successfully, whether or not we leverage them against our intelligence, our talents, our skills, our experience, our wisdom, and ultimately our money. Money is one of the greatest levers, the greatest fulcrum that you can leverage against to buy back your time, to get back as much time, to use your time as efficiently as you can. And then once you're in this place where you're trying to buy back your time, you very quickly open up both time and money freedom. That gives you access to the three other freedoms. There's five freedoms that we like to talk about a lot, and we're going to talk about those a lot here in just one moment. So we find, again, just kind of working with people who have a lot more success than we do, that you tend to pursue location freedom first. I like the expression that the world is your playground, but how tragic is it if you have time, you have money, and you never take the time to see it? Maybe you are working so hard in your active job that you don't have time to go enjoy it, or you think you need to accrue this huge amount of net worth, not realizing the tragedy of not seeing the world, this incredible gift that you've been given. So just jot down right now. I feel like this is a real softball. Where on this earth must you go before you die? Where
Mm-hmm.
on this earth must you go before you die? Right now, I really want to go to Japan. I want to take my older kids to Japan, and I don't know. I feel called to do that right now. We've got a few fun photos to share with you as you brainstorm. Go ahead and jot it down, put it in the chat. Where on this earth must you go before you die?
Yeah, I know this is a group that likes to do a lot of travel, right? And knowing that, right, like all the money in the world, all the money in the bank, it doesn't replace these beautiful trips and the exploration of the world and the things that you see and the growth that happens and the memories that are made. And so location freedom kind of, people chase this one, right? Because it gives you the ability to have all of these precious experiences. Where on this earth must you go before you die? Jerusalem, Australia, Israel, Africa, another Japan there for you, Fiji, Tahiti, Taiwan, Patagonia. Oh, also good. These are all on our list too. Japan, right? Think about this.
Okay, we need to do a Freedom and Legacy Japan trip apparently.
There you go.
Another kind of fun location, Freedom. So this we'll call this an announcement. So we are officially under contract to buy the building that we're in right now.
Hmm.
We've been officing out of this building since 2018. It's a B class office building. It's nothing amazing, but it's in a very convenient location. It's close to our portfolio, our team, and our resources and everything are already here. And one of the other suites in this building opened up that's nicer, bigger, just is going to give our team more space to work. We are bursting at the seams. There's people, sometimes we've got 6 or 7 people in a single office right now. And we went to lease that office, and unfortunately, someone else already leased it. This is kind of a high demand location. And office space is not exactly an in-demand asset class right now, right? So I went to the broker and I said, hey, would the seller like to sell the building? Would that get us the space? And they said, well, yes, of course. If it's an office building, it's for sale right now, and it's actually far cheaper for us to buy the building than it is for us to lease the space. That's the crazy spot in the economy right now, and the fact that we have financial wealth has given us an incredible amount of location freedom. How it's an extraordinary place of privilege to say, I really like this spot. We've got lots of kind of synergies with Keller Williams here. We need a little more space, so let's just buy the building and choose where we get the privilege to work. So I just wanted to celebrate that kind of playful story with you there. But what is the Gemba, the place of real work where you would really like to create value? What's that ideal place? Again, jot that down, put that into chat. Where do you feel most productive? Would you love to have a beautiful garden that you curate? Would you love to have a place in the mountains? What would that place look like for you if money were no object, if location were no object? What would that be for you? And what kind of beautiful life would that create for you? The next freedom is relationship freedom. So when you have time freedom, when you have financial freedom, when you have location freedom, that gives you the opportunity to connect with very interesting people. And it's so amazing to be able to connect with people on Zoom like this. We love the opportunity to serve people. We love to do teaching and speaking almost every day. We'll do different teaching and speaking engagements, but there's no substitute for being face to face with someone to really get into relationship with them. And we encourage you to surround yourself with the most awesome, incredible, successful, amazing people you can possibly surround yourself with. Like we just met with someone who is doing income restricted housing at a much greater scale than we're doing. And I said, hey, we'd really like to just come visit you and just hang out with you for a day. What day, any day, we'll clear our calendar. We just want to fly down, see your projects, meet your team. Like, how are you doing this at a scale 10x what we're doing? We know if we just spend time with you, we will eventually have what you have. We'll do what you do. We'll know who you are. We'll understand it in a way that, hanging out in like a Zoom room, it just can't achieve. So some fun photos here of Elaine hanging out with Tony Robbins, one of our favorite mentors. We've got one of our staff members in the Grinch outfit handing out Christmas cards to our tenants. One thing that's nice about owning a company is that we have a strict no assholes policy. I don't know about you, but one of the things that frustrated me the most about being a W-2 employee was that I often had to work with jerks. And I thought, man, if only I own the company, I could just fire these people. It's not quite that simple, but it is awesome to have a team that you love working with. In the bottom right there, we've got Elaine's Freedom and Legacy group at the Date with Destiny retreat. And then in the top right is me hanging out with Gary Keller, the most powerful person in real estate on earth, at his personal ranch with like a dozen other people. One of the, I don't know, cooler moments of my life. There's Gary with his hand on my shoulder. I don't know how that came to be, but I feel so incredibly grateful that I have the financial time and location freedom that when the opportunity presented itself, like an email showed up, hey, we noticed that you and Elaine do a lot of giving. Gary's having this like little summit of people that give a lot at his ranch. You want to go hang out with Gary for a day? Heck yes, I would really like to do that. And so we got to go hang out with Gary for a day. And just jot down right now, who are your best friends today? The average American has 1.5 people that they could call a friend if they're age 40 or over. It's really tragic. Who are your best friends today? Who are your advisors? Who do you have in your corner? Who's rooting for you? Who's pushing you to be more, to do more, to share more, to give more, to create more? And who should they be? Be honest with yourself. Are they the people they are today, or is it time for you to level up? And you don't necessarily have to wait to have these other freedoms in order to have relationship freedom. It certainly does help a lot, but Zoom can take you pretty far. We Zoom with lots of people every single week. We carve out
All
time
day, every
to
day.
yeah to spend time with cool people because we know that this is so utterly important.
Who are your advisors, right? Who are the people that you want to be in relationship with, who are several steps ahead of you on the path that you can look to them for guidance? You can seek to develop a personal relationship with them so that you can actively seek their guidance and their mentorship. And then who should these people be, right? Who are the people that can take you to the next level, right? If we are the average of the five people we spend the most amount of time with, who are the one or two or three people you want to bring into that five, spend more time with those folks so that you can up level your life in relationship freedom. When I think about when we really started to like really double down on creating all of these different types of freedoms in our life, we weren't necessarily in a place where we had a lot of liquidity that we could spend on trips and those sorts of things, and yet we did. We
And that's something that you always pushed. I had a lot of scarcity when it came. Oh, we
Mhm.
can't afford that trip. And now, in retrospect, I'm so glad you did because there's no way I could go back 10 years and go to the Grand Canyon with you.
Well, and even yeah, I would say even more recently that we've really prioritized being in masterminds, working with coaches, being in Tony Robbins Platinum for a year, right? Really saying like, how can we be in relationship with people who are several steps ahead of us and prioritizing that, knowing that those dollars were huge investments in ourselves, huge investments in our relationships, and that the ROI that we would get, not just the memories and the joy, but the ROI that we could bring back to our business, that we could bring back to our real estate investing, that we could use to generate more passive income, all of that would become this kind of virtuous cycle that would accelerate all of the freedoms. And now we spend a lot of our location freedom in relationship freedom. Almost all of our travel is to see someone else, is to take our children somewhere, meet up with people in freedom and legacy, go to events, go to masterminds. We have some pictures later of taking our children to masterminds. Like that's like a whole new world that we can be not only in relationship with our peers, but have our children in relationship with peers their age, kind of learning these lessons together. And it was a lot of work to build this relationship freedom and this location freedom to make it happen. What steps do you need to take to move closer to that? What are the things that are maybe a large investment now, but the ROI will be so staggering that you'll look back at it a few years and say, I'm so glad I made time for that. I'm so glad I made time for that conference or that mastermind or that trip or going to meet those people, be coached by those people, led by those people. Think about those things. See your future self kind of telling you, I'm so glad you did that. 3 years ago when you made that decision, 5 years ago when you made that decision, I'm so glad you did that because it led us to here.
And that finally leads to impact freedom. And this can be a hard one to visualize. This can be a hard one to think about if you don't yet have any of the other freedoms. If you are struggling where you've got an extra $600 a month, just like we were 14 years ago, it's hard to think about impact. It's an abstract concept. And the fact is, very few people give, very few people choose to support the community around you. But let me ask you, if you've had children, after you had children, do you feel like you had more or less capacity? I suppose in some way you have less capacity because you're so dedicated on taking care of your children that you maybe have less spare capacity. But I find that when you choose to support more people at a greater level of insight, of resource will flow through you. You don't need to be the source of this thing. You just need to be a conduit for it. And when we chose to support a school, all of a sudden like a much greater level of insight flowed through us. And we decided to support a third of $1 billion real estate portfolio. I'll tell you, a lot of insights need to flow through you on a daily basis. Like as we were preparing for this, we had to deal with two different situations that had never happened before. And our director of operations took care of both of them, but just kind of gave us a heads up. Hey, here's some interesting things that happened today that had not happened before. And so when you choose to lead a bigger life, when you choose to have a greater impact, a greater level of insight will flow through you. And in the end, you will trade everything else for this one thing. In the end, you will trade your money, your time, your relationships, your location to have an impact. And so we would challenge you to ask, what do you want the world to look like when you're no longer in it? we get so few minutes, so few precious minutes on this earth, and one day we will be gone and the world will move on. But hopefully, in some way, shape, or form, there will be an echo of you into eternity. What would you like that echo to look like? And whose life could you change for the better in your brief time here? Maybe it's not a thing. We've got a photo of the school that we have a privilege to support. We've got a photo of Stonehaven Apartments that's coming out of the ground right now. It's so satisfying to see this thing where long after Elaine and I are buried and in the ground, this building will still be providing housing for humans. 100 years from now, hopefully it's still here. And there's a photo of my mother there at the end of her life in 2022. And I think about how, because we had some wealth at that time, some of those types of wealth, we were able to give her the most beautiful end to her life that I could possibly fathom. And Elaine really led that in just a profound way. And I am so grateful. When I look at these images, the volume on everything else just gets turned way down. This is the thing that moves the needle more than anything else. But it's tough to see this until you have some of those other freedoms. And it's important for you to understand this now before you get there, because if you go get financial freedom and you haven't yet thought about some of these other freedoms, it can be a strangely unfulfilling thing. And if you don't have clarity about what that future looks like, you might be wondering, why are you talking so much about all this cool stuff and not about just how to make more money? Well, the brutal truth is that until you have a crystal clear vision about what a beautiful life looks like on the other side of financial freedom, you will never have it. You will never achieve financial freedom. That's how it works. That's how it works.
You have to have that burning why, right? Otherwise, it's just too easy to want to spend more, right? To want to have that, to chase that dopamine, day to day, right? That increases the burn rate, which means there's not money left over to invest to generate that passive income. And so when you really think about who you want to be, right? Be, do, have, right? We think that it's the opposite. We think once we have the things that we want, then we'll be able to do the things that we want to do, and then we'll become the people that we want to be. But it's really the opposite. We have to be that person first, and then we start to have those experiences, and then we get those things in life. And so thinking about those at the forefront to be the engine that drives all of this. When I think about impact freedom, I really think about not just what do you want the world to look like when you are no longer in it, but think about a time that like sort of takes your breath away. Like, what if you had 10 years left to live? Right. I think one of the it was short. It was only like a week in the scheme of our life. But one of the most transformative things in our lives happened when I was in medical school. And I had some palpitations, and I had an echocardiogram done. And the initial read was that I had very, very, very elevated pulmonary hypertension. Mm-hmm. And, this is the age of like medical portals, right? So I got that through the medical portal, and I got a note from my primary care doctor that said, I'm going to refer you urgently to a cardiologist. And I just kind of had to like stew on that for a week. And like the appointment was like a month out. And then I remember a dear, mentor in medical school, she kind of saw that I was upset about something, and she's like, let me get you in with a cardiologist like tomorrow. But in that week, like we really had to have like really very serious conversations of like, what if I only have 10 years left to live? And what if I have like, lots of medications that I have to take during that time? And what would my quality of life look like? And I remember so vividly, even this would have been either my first or my second year of medical school. I said, well, of course I'll quit medical school and I'll have a child, even if it kills me, right? Even if it kills me, I will have a child. And when you look at my life today, right, that is what I did, right? And it turns out that it was a misread of the echo, and I never had any problems. There was another echo after that for follow-up. It was
with us for many years.
Yeah, it was all just a misread, right? And I am so thankful that I had to live it for like 5 or 6 days and like really think about like, what would I really want the world to look like if I only had 10 years left in it? And that like really, that's a story I don't know that we've ever shared.
By the way, there's a test on this at the end of the presentation. So I hope you're paying attention, taking notes.
I don't know that we've ever shared that story before, right? Of all the stories we've shared, I don't know that we've ever shared that one. But it just kind of planted these seeds in our minds of, we knew that we didn't, even though we were working toward high-powered professions that where we would be expected to be in the office a lot. We were actively working toward those things at the same time that we were actively building our passive income because we knew that we didn't want to exchange our time for money until eternity. And it really came back to that week that we spent sort of asking ourselves, what do we really want? And we said we want time freedom and we want a lot of children. And that's what we have today.
We're gonna share a few more stories with you. We hope these are impactful to you. We hope that you
I
are
hope that you're writing.
jotting down.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly. I hope you're writing down, like, as I'm telling you, this story, like, what's a story that happened in your life? What's a time that we've all had these things, right? Like an icy, slip on the car, right? We make a wrong step somewhere. Like, I'm sure you've had that moment where you thought, like, is this the end for me? Like, recall that moment and think about, in that moment, what were you thinking about? What was going through your mind? Who were you thinking about calling? What were you thinking about doing? And summon that energy to create the vision of the impact freedom that you want to create in your life so that you can bring it as close as possible. And we hope that we all get to live, not only the 78 or 80 years or whatever that, our life expectancy at birth, but with modern technology, maybe we all get, triple digits in our lifespan. But what if not? And that's going to be the energy that drives you. Simply chasing the bank account, the net worth, the math. There's a very small portion of the population that alone will be stimulating enough to make it worth it. So that's why we talk about these things.
Yeah. People often ask us, how do you do it all? How do you balance it all? And the truth is, we don't. We subscribe to an idea of the integrated life. And when you can double, triple, quadruple dip on your minutes of the day, of your experiences, on your freedoms, we think that's when you really lead an incredibly rich and incredibly beautiful life. And we've got just a few photos here. Elaine, you've got your baby there with the baby carrier. I think you put this one on Facebook, if I remember right, or something.
Yeah, so this is me and baby Elijah. He's about 5 months old now, so he's not quite sleeping all day. He,
He's
wants to
definitely not
be
sleeping at night.
he's not sleeping at
Oh
night
my
either.
gosh.
I don't know when he sleeps.
Yeah.
But he needs a little bit more from me during the day. And I've kind of taken this like sort of indefinite extended maternity leave because who knows, maybe he'll be our last baby. We're hoping for more, but my age is getting up there, so maybe he'll be our last baby. So I'm soaking it up. And yet I'm still running, multiple companies, and I'm thinking about how can I get done the things that I need to get done. And so here I am working from home. Sometimes I choose to work from home. Sometimes I choose to come into the office wearing my baby, wearing my robe. I think I took this picture at like noon. And yet I'm still able to
Looking good though. Looking fresh.
yeah, to be the mom I want to be present for my baby, to be present for my company, to be present for my people. And that all came from building these freedoms over the years. There's a picture there of our two oldest children, Selah and Shepherd. That's the family mastermind that we took them to this January. That was our second year of doing that and thinking about having the finances to take, we took baby Elijah to that too. So to take 5 of us on a trip to sign up for a mastermind, having the location freedom that we could run our business while we were there, that we had a team that could take care of most of the things that needed to happen here in the office, having relationship freedom of having a deep relationship with that mastermind for many, many years and taking our children there for the second time, all of that culminating in impact freedom, right? In we don't just want to leave our children with a bag of money. And I'm sure you don't want that either, whether it's your children, nieces and nephews, whoever it is, as you're thinking about the next generation. We want to leave them with a sense of identity, with a sense of principles and values and ethics and an idea of how to create real value in the world. And we had to have those things to get to where we could have this opportunity to sort of bring all of it together to have this impact freedom. And it's just like the joy of my life to be thinking about my children at 7 and 9, thinking about mission statement and vision statement and what are our family values and what do we stand for and how do we create value in the world. The one there in the middle is Nick sharing a hug with some of our dear friends, some of our dear investors. That's at a Tony Robbins event. Again, you can kind of see this pattern here where we're dedicating a lot of our resources to create those relationships, to create that impact, because at the end, that's all that matters, right? Running up the score gets boring very quickly, but impact freedom is really what matters. And I hope that as you're thinking through this, you're feeling that sense of excitement of like, well, I must have this thing in my life. I must have this impact. I must have these relationships. I must see these places in the world. I must have this time freedom. I will do whatever it takes to create the financial freedom that can fuel those things. And we're going to jump into the math part of that here soon. And then in the middle there is my mom. She's actually my aunt. She raised me because my parents essentially were unavailable to raise me because of addiction and other things. And because of the freedom that we have in our lives, we fly her to and from Pennsylvania quite a bit so that she's able to really be with her grandchildren, really be there to support me, support our household. And at the end, that's all that matters, right? At the end, that's all that matters. That she could, I took this, this sweet photo where she had put baby Elijah to sleep and she fell asleep next to him. Like, this is what people remember at the end of their lives.
Yes.
This is what she will remember at the end of her life. This is how I will remember her at the end of her life. And the good Lord willing, I hope she has 20, 25 years left. That impact freedom is what matters. Who we are, who we become, the people that we touch, the ways that we give, the ways that we serve. This is what all comes together as we generate these 5 freedoms.
So jot down right now, what does the integrated life look like for you? What's the scenario where you can have it all, where you can have financial freedom, time freedom, location freedom, relationship freedom, impact freedom, all in one experience? What are some of the greatest experiences of your life? How can you reproduce those? What are some areas in your life where you're trying to balance, where you're trying to have something or something, and it's not working out very well? We don't think that's possible. If you want to lead a big life, a beautiful life, you have to be able to double, triple, quadruple dip on these things. If you're going to be able to do it all, you can't do everything, but you can do anything, and you can do a whole lot of things if you can do a lot of them at the same time. So just jot those things down.
Yeah, what does an integrated life look like for you?
Mm-hmm.
When you think about the 5 freedoms coming together for you, what does that look like in your life? Because that's going to be the fuel that drives you to create that financial freedom. We have found time and time and time again that without that fuel, the chase for financial freedom is really only exciting for months or maybe a year or so. And then it kind of fizzles out and people sort of get stuck in this loop where they feel like it's sort of it kind of fits and starts and they're sort of not sure how to build the momentum to really, break free, buy back their time, create their time freedom to be able to start to really live out and embody those other freedoms. But when you put this first, then when you're in that sort of lull in your motivation, which is inevitably going to happen, and it doesn't mean anything about your character or your work ethic, it just means that you're human. But when you're in that lull, you'll remember, I'm not creating the financial freedom just to put a number on the spreadsheet, just to run up the score. I'm creating it because I must have this life. This is the person that I know I am meant to be, right? Be, do, have. That should be in your notes. Be, do, have. And because I am this person, I'm going to create this financial freedom for myself so that it can all flow from there, so that my cup can run over and I can share with my friends and I can share with my community and I can have all of these beautiful embodied experiences.
We were sincere when we said that we are a Trojan horse. We would be reckless to help you merely get financial freedom because first of all, it doesn't work. It's not intrinsically motivating enough. It gets you maybe a year, and you just don't get there. It's the things on the other side that give you all the juice. And for those few people who do achieve financial freedom and they don't yet know what that integrated life looks like, they don't yet know about the other types of freedom and the joy and the fulfillment, the richness that goes with it. Those people are the ones that you read about on the news. They're the incredible movie star that commits suicide or that crashes and burns out. And so we try to give you what you want, which is financial freedom. And along the way, we try to sneak in what you need, which is understanding the 5 freedoms and the integrated life, knowing that once you get a vivid glimpse of that, if I hope you're writing down right now in vivid detail, where on this earth do you want to go? What do you want the earth to look like when you're no longer in it? What are the greatest, most impactful experiences you've had in your entire life? Those are the things that will pull you forward, and you will be so hungry, so driven to make your cup overflow that it'll be like the Kool-Aid man bursts through the wall and is dousing you, after the big game or something like that. And that has been our lived experience. That has been our lived experience for years. We strove and we incrementally increased our wealth, and one day we just decided that we were going to fully commit to the integrated life, and so much richness has come into our life, and then just so much financial wealth to go along with it. We keep score. We look every month. Our accountant calculates our net worth and our burn rate and our passive income, because we keep track of those things. We want to make sure we're going forward, not going backward. And we have a lot of other people's money that we need to manage. But it's like, hey, cool, the score went up again this month. That's awesome. We get to celebrate that. But it's this stuff that really makes us celebrate. At the end of the day, in our experience, no one wants to sit on a beach for 7 days a week. If you ever did achieve financial freedom, if you got to infinite wealth, you might take a trip or two. You might go on an around the world cruise or something like that. But after a while, it gets tiring, and particularly for men, as soon as you lose your mission, when you retire, your lifespan falls off precipitously. Women tend to have a little more wisdom, have better ability to find a life of meaning, because they have better ability to connect with other people around them, and that relationship freedom propels them forward. But if you don't have a clear vision of what the world looks like and why you need to be in it after you are financially free, you're not going to be financially free for very long. Consciously or subconsciously, you'll sabotage that wealth to make sure you never get there. You lose it after you do, or you decide this world just doesn't need you anymore. And this world needs you. This world needs you so much. And once you see that calling, there is so much abundance waiting for you on the other side of it.
With that, let's jump into the math. Hopefully by
Yes.
sometimes people are afraid of math or like, I can't do math. I promise you, you can do math. Like the math for finances is so easy. This isn't trigonometry. This isn't calculus. This is basic arithmetic. You just have to know adding, subtracting, multiplying, dividing. You've got this. And I hope you're inspired now that you're like, yes, I must,
Math.
right? Like I must optimize my finances. I must know what my burn rate is. I must think about how I can bring in my burn rate. I must know how much passive income I'm generating per month and think of many different ways that I can increase the amount of passive income that I'm generating. I must know what my store of wealth is, right? And then the definition of infinite wealth is that your passive income on an annual basis exceeds your burn rate on an annual basis, so that at the end of each year, you are contributing more to your net worth because you are earning more passively than you're spending. And that's when you're in that infinite wealth loop. And we're going to show you mathematically how it's really not that hard, right? We want you to see how most people can get it faster than they think. We don't want you to be 65. We don't want you to be 70. I remember early on when I was like in my early 20s and I was reading about 401ks and IRAs and those sorts of things. And like with the withdrawal deadlines, you have to be like
Yeah.
59 and a half and those
It's
sorts of things. And I was like, that is so far away. I don't want to do that. I don't want to like put my money in jail for 40 years. I want it now.
And it assumes
Right.
that you grow your wealth so slowly. It's such low expectations. And most people, we find the biggest thing that holds them back is just low expectations. So those contribution limits and stuff, it's a terrible mindset.
Here we go.
So let's assume that you want to achieve what we lovingly refer to as escape velocity. So imagine you're, I don't know, orbiting the planet and you want to escape the Earth's planet. You need to achieve a certain amount of velocity before you can escape that gravitational pull. And that's kind of what it feels like when at first you're on a treadmill, when you looked at our income and expenses and we had like 6,000 in income and only 10% of that was left at the end of the month. Like, how can anyone get ahead when you've got this tiny little sliver that you're working with? Now, truthfully though, we owned 2 real estate properties, and we were flipping cars. That was kind of like variable income that we couldn't really include that, because like maybe one month we make like $4,000 and we can 8x the amount of money we save that month, but then we might go several months, particularly in the winter, where there's no income from that income stream. So there's lots of additional variables there. And one way or another, we know that if you're listening to this webinar, you have a way that you can increase your active or passive income, and you have ways that you can reduce your burn rate. Go listen to some Dave Ramsey, do some Financial Peace University or something like that. Go do some moonlighting or do some locums work. And if you're a busy professional, you often have extremely valuable time that you can sell. And as long as you use that money wisely, that can be a very good trade. And it can be hyper motivating to have clarity. Clarity is power, and know just how many years you are from financial freedom. So if we measure wealth in years, the number of years you can live without working, the measure of how far you are from financial freedom, it's also in time. How many years are you from escape velocity? So this is easy math to do. Let's say hypothetically, we're going to use some round numbers that may or may not be applicable to you. Let's say that you are earning 200,000 a year and you're burning 100,000 a year, which means that you could save 100,000 a year. We're doing some very round numbers. Let's say you put 100,000 per year into an investment that pays a 10% fixed rate of return. In year one, you'd have 110,000, and then it starts compounding. The compounding effect is incredibly powerful. Einstein said it was the eighth wonder of the world. 2 years from now, you'd have 230K, and all the way down to 7 years from now, you'd have over $1 million. And if you could draw that 10% from that vehicle, you would have achieved infinite wealth in 7 years. In 7 years, I don't know about you, but that doesn't feel that far away. That feels like it's almost within reach. And for me, that's hyper motivating to go work that extra shift, to maybe wait a couple of years before getting an upgrade to my car, to maximize the amount of work that I'm saving and try everything in my power to get the best possible rate of return, knowing that shaves years off of the time it takes me to reach escape velocity. Now you might say, but Nick, I don't make 200,000 a year, or my cost of living costs 600,000 a year, or something like that. Your numbers are going to look a little bit different, but we've done this a long time, and we found it's actually pretty common for people to be like 5 to 10 years away from financial freedom. They often think that it's 30 years in the future. We get taught that retirement is something for age 65 plus, and that's just not true. If you are focused, if you're intense, and you're willing to work hard in the short term, you can get to escape velocity. Between the years of 2018 and 2020, Elaine or I, one of us was working 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Elaine was in residency, working overnights. We had a young baby. I was managing 13 teams of engineers by day, working on a real estate portfolio at night. Elaine would be like fielding leads and stuff like that in her email inbox while she was between patients, then like calling me to go to do a showing, when I get out of work. And it was crazy.
Moonlighting overnight as much as I possibly could. Because I just had this belief that if we worked 24 hours a day for a few years, we wouldn't ever have to work again. And that's what happened.
That's exactly
and yet
what
we
happened.
choose to work, right? So we're going to talk about that too.
Yeah.
Most humans love to work. Most humans choose to keep working.
The only difference between stress and passion is the belief that you are doing something that matters. I'll say that a second time. The only difference between stress and passion is the belief that what you're doing matters. They're both high energy states. They're both intense states. But if you are compelled to do this something that you think doesn't matter, that you don't want to do, that you have to do all of a sudden, that's stressful. But when you get to just pour yourself out, when you have clarity, when you are this unstoppable force on an incredible mission, you can work 24 hours a day, 7 days a week for 2 years straight. And all of a sudden you are on the other side of financial freedom. For us, it was about $80,000 per year on a real estate portfolio of about 20 units. You'll notice that we're not telling you what to invest in. We've got some great talks that we did last year. Rachel could share some links to that for Passive Investing 101 and Passive Investing 201, where we dig deep into the how. At the end of the day, a strong enough why will find any how. And that's what we're talking about right now today, is the why to go with the how that we talked about last year. You have lots of hows that are available to you. And the math, one way or another, probably looks pretty similar to this right here. It is very likely that you are not that many years away from financial freedom. So let's talk just a little bit about some myths of passive investing. And by the way, if you're incredulous about any of this, go ahead and pipe it in chat. This is our second to last slide, I think. So we're crushing it on time. I'm really proud of us this month. We sometimes run for several hours.
We should go for like 3 hours. It's just super fun. But...
Yeah. So here's some passive investing myths. So first of all is the whole idea of passive investing period, which I know that's what we headlined with, but that's the term that people understand. If we said escape velocity, like that's not a webinar that people are going to show up to. So we talk about passive income, but all investing is active to some extent or another. You are hopefully receiving tax documents that you are hopefully filing with the IRS. You're hopefully doing some due diligence and underwriting if that's a good investment opportunity, something that's wise to invest in. You're probably spending a little bit of time diligently keeping an eye on that investment and making sure that investment is growing the way it should and is being stewarded appropriately. So there's a certain amount of time that you put into it, and there's a spectrum to it. So maybe you decide to manage some of your own long-term rentals or some of your own short-term rentals, and we're kind of moving down a spectrum of more and more active. But that leads to our next myth, which is that quitting your day job is rarely the right move. There's a lot of people out there who feel like they should be in this race to quit their day job. And most people, if they're a well-paid professional, it's difficult to like quit your day job as a doctor to go into the property management industry and come out ahead on that difference. Just you make a lot more money in the medical industry than you do in the property management industry. And it's probably a better use of your resources, of your money to hire someone to help you in that investing endeavor than it is to do it yourself. Not always the case. Maybe you love it. Maybe you are just exceptionally talented at property management. Maybe you're not very talented as a doctor or something like that, and you just chose the wrong course in life. But one way or another, most of the time, it makes sense for you to stay in your day job and then do your best to make sure that you're getting the best possible passive returns in the things that you choose to invest in. The next myth here is this idea that you can cash flow your way to financial freedom. There's I don't know, it's like a bigger pockets theory or something like that, that you can buy enough single family homes that those single family homes will produce enough cash flow to get you to financial freedom. Well, if you do the math on that, let's say that you have a $200,000 income in that example that we put together, and you're making like $100 a month per unit per month in cash flow. You need a lot of houses to get to financial freedom. Equity is what almost always creates real wealth for you. I'll say that a second time. Equity is what almost always creates the real wealth in anything that you invest in, not cash flow. So cash flow, it tends to be a discounted income stream in one way or another. It's something that is a good defensive metric in almost every investment. If that investment produces positive cash flow, that's a really good defensive thing that keeps you out of bankruptcy. But high cash flow investments are often lower return investments, and those are trade-offs that you need to consider. And then active investing is an interesting thing too. We see a lot of investors who want to get really deep into the weeds as though their time isn't valuable, and we find they are intensely interested in investing for a short period of time. And we call that the Tamagotchi trap. So if you remember the Tamagotchis, those little pets, there's like on a keychain that you could play with, and you would like feed it and give it a bath and stuff, and you could kind of play with it like for 5 minutes a day, and you could forget about it and neglect it, and it would kind of be okay, and you kind of go play with it the next day. Unfortunately, most businesses, most kind of active investments, they are not Tamagotchis, and if you neglect them for even a short period of time, you will have very bad outcomes. And so, if you decide you want to be actively involved in whatever it is that you're investing in, you have to be extraordinarily careful about that. I did a bunch of crypto stuff in 2018. We heated our home through a Minnesota winter with cryptocurrency mining rigs. We maxed out like our main power mains coming into our house. I think we had like 100 cryptocurrency mining rigs that I put together, and about probably once a week, someone would try to hack into our house to steal our cryptocurrency, which is not anything I had on like my underwriting for that investment. It was pretty crazy. Like I had some security stuff set up, and we were just this insane target for hackers because we had all these mining rigs, and so hackers can track all that activity. And if you have mining rigs, then you probably have some cryptocurrency that they could hack into your computers and steal. And that was like one of the reasons we got out of it. And it turns out that actively investing in cryptocurrency was not such a wise venture. We did get all of our money out. We hit a break even, but I worked very hard to get that break even. And I would say that was the quintessential like Tamagotchi trap right there. I'm like, oh, this is going to be great. I'm going to set up these mining rigs, and they're just going to heat our home through the winter, and we're going to make $1 bazillion. And no, like they go down all the time, and I'd have to boot them back up. And I did that for a few months. I'm like, I'm never going to do this again. And unfortunately, we haven't. I think I learned my lesson from that. Some advice here from Gary Keller to not get bored with what works. Gary Keller says it is the undoing of most entrepreneurs, most investors to get bored with what works. You do something, it's like, man, that was really awesome, but I've gotten so good at it that it's not interesting, it's not exciting anymore. But here's something that's really cool. Repetition is the mother of mastery, and anything when you do it enough, when you build mastery enough, it's elevated to an art form. And anything at its apex, it becomes art. I was telling you how we wanted to fly down to meet this person who's doing income restricted housing. This person has done it so many times. They have elevated income restricted housing to an art form. Their buildings, they look like incredible. They're bomb proof to work really well with low income tenants. The way they line up grant funding and stuff, it's like a painting. It's absolute art. And if you really, really want to lead a big life, if you want to achieve financial freedom in a big way, it almost always comes from repeating something so many times that you build a level of mastery that becomes supernatural. And I encourage you to revel in that process of mastery in elevating that to an art. Next is this is a Robert Kiyosaki phrase, diversification. Warren Buffett says that the greatest way to grow wealth is with concentration, and the best way to protect wealth is concentration. So we don't know where you are on that journey, on that spectrum. If you're on this call, there's a good chance you're probably more in the growth phase than in the kind of protection phase. And so most likely the best thing you could do is to concentrate your investments into a few really strong investments, maybe test them at first, and then go all in on those investments, double, triple, quadruple down on those investments, the ones that appear to be the safest, that appear to have had the best yield, that have strong operators, careful stewards that appear to care about you, about your money, about this sacred duty that they have to care for your wealth. And almost all fortunes are built on concentration. Very few people in history have ever made great fortunes by putting a little bit here, a little bit there. The idea of having like a well-diversified portfolio, it might sound sophisticated. And yet, if you look at Sam Walton or Bill Gates or Elon Musk or Warren Buffett says if he could just own a few companies, like 3 companies, that would be great. Just his pile of capital is so big, it has to be put into more companies than that. And finally, this is something that's hopefully maybe a relief to the younger people on this call. And maybe this is a little scary to people who might be a little bit older on this call. But the passive investing journey is not linear. It's not linear. So I think a lot of people, they think, okay, if I just save 4% a year, then I can draw 4% a year after I retire. Those are numbers I've heard before, like 401k is like a 4% match. And a CFP says you can draw 4% from your portfolio. So I put in money for 30 years and then I draw money out for 30 years and then I ride off into the sunset or something like that. But that's not how life works. Not even a little bit. In our experience, somewhere in the neighborhood of 90% of each person's net worth tends to be earned between the ages of 45 and 55. Maybe it's not realized during that time, but that wealth is created during that time. That's when you fund your retirement account that eventually snowballs into your huge nest egg that gives you a very comfortable retirement. Maybe you start a business or start a private practice that eventually sells for a big multiple when you're 65 years old or something like that. So if you are doing some of this math and you're 30 years old and you're feeling kind of defeated right now, well, we've got great news for you. Was it Freud? No, it was said life begins at 40. Everything until then is just practice.
I can't remember who it was,
No, it
but
wasn't
yes,
Freud. Is Jung? Jung said
yeah.
that life begins at 40. Everything until then is practice. We find that that's pretty darn accurate. If you chart someone's net worth over time, something that we've done quite a bit of in our coaching careers, we find it's got some ups and downs with very predictable patterns. And between the ages of 45 and 55, that's the sweet spot when a lot of net worth is generated. So if you're 55 or 60 and you still are plotting out your burn rate and your passive income, your net worth, and you're 20 years from financial freedom, well, you're behind schedule and you have some catching up to do. And if you're 25 years old or 30 years old or 35 years old or 40 years old, give yourself some grace. You've got a long, long, long runway ahead of you, and you have no idea the great things that are in store for you. And I promise you, when you're young, all you need to do is think really critically about the life that's ahead of you. Yeah, we could throw that there. Here's an actual chart of our net worth over time, and
It's not linear.
it's not linear. And this is what every chart looks like, right? It always has this shape, just kind of slow, steady, and then there's this hockey stick effect. It's like E or it's pi. It's like some constant built into the universe, and this is what it always looks like.
And in those early years where it seems like nothing is happening, I remember those years so well. I remember
Those are the good days.
I remember many days sort of when we would do our net worth calculator, we would look at our portfolio and I would say, but they only cash flow $200 per month, Nick. How many houses do we have to buy? This is never going to work. It's not going to happen, right? And that's when we were in that early phase. And when things start to tick up, right, that's when you start to see some of that compounding effect from investing dollars over and over, lowering your burn rate, using that active income to generate passive income. And then I have found time and time again that when people really find what works for them, right, like what Nick was saying, wealth is grown through concentration, it's protected through diversification. When people find what really works for them and they concentrate on that, that's when the exponential growth happens. This is our actual net worth calculation. This goes from like 2011 to I think like 2022 or something like that. But this is everyone's. Almost everyone has a curve that looks very similar to this, and there's kind of lessons to be learned in each phase there. The lesson in that slow, steady part is like the cake is in the oven, right? Just know that the cake is in the oven and that the cake needs to be in the oven and it's baking and that goodness will come from it.
Making me
and
hungry.
and believe in yourself. Believe that if you do the fundamentals over and over and over again, that you will see the reward from that. And then that escalation is when you're starting to get some return on the compounding of your wealth. And then that the lesson in the exponential phase is do what has worked and do it as many times as possible.
Yeah.
It's a little bonus there that I couldn't help but bring out.
So I was sincere when I said that there was going to be a test at the end. So oh, I'm sorry, we have a few quality questions here first.
Yeah.
So passive investing myths. What like if you haven't written anything down, just write these things down, and you're going to walk away with the headline of getting some passive investing wins here. So what is the most successful passive investment ever that you've done? What is your most successful passive investment ever, and how can you reproduce it? It's this is like one of the most common coaching questions that Elaine and I ask. People will come to us and kind of pour their heart out. I did this and this and this, and say, okay, well, that's a lot of different stuff. Like what have you done that's been most successful? Oh, one time I bought this triplex and I flipped it and I doubled my money in a week. Oh, awesome. Could you do that twice? Could you do that three times? If you did only that and nothing else, how much wealth would you have? Is it possible for you to reproduce that outcome? Next, what is the most dollars per hour you have ever made? I kind of use some deliberately simple like English there. Like we think a lot about our time in terms of dollars per hour. Time and money can be interchangeable units of measure. That's just how Western culture, American culture works. And it's a great way to understand, are you using your time effectively, or is this something that you should leverage out? And if you're listening to this call, there's a good chance that your time is quite valuable. Elaine had the chance to moonlight and take on extra shifts and earn a pretty extravagant wage, far more per hour than I could make as a technologist. And she took advantage of that when it mattered most. And then we snowballed that into our investments. What is the most dollars per hour you've ever made, and how can you do more of that? Can you do only that thing? Can you stop doing all these other things where you're making half or a third or a tenth as much per hour? You could also ask the opposite question: is when are you making the least amount per hour? Are you mowing your own lawn? Are you scrubbing your own toilets? Are you clearing your own snow if you live in a snowy climate like ours? Not that our climate's very snowy this year. Next, where do you need to double down in your investing? What investing relationships have been the most successful investing relationships you've ever had? And where do you need to lean into those relationships and get an even better outcome than you've ever gotten before? Next, are there any Tamagotchis that you are tending to right now? Or is there an STR in the Smokies? Is there a beach house in Florida or in Texas that you are that's eating your lunch right now that you need to get off your plate? It's an interesting mixed metaphor. That actually works. So that's pretty good. If you're in any age coaching program, talk to her about that, or you can block time on my calendar. Happy to give you 15 minutes of my time. What can we do to help you get those Tamagotchis? They're eating your lunch off your plate. I'm gonna run with that. And then finally, how old are you versus your net worth goal? Be honest with yourself. Be honest with yourself. Are you 60 years old and you're still 20 years away? I really hope not. I hope that you have played full out in our time here together, that you've written some things down, that you've put your math into the different calculators that we're giving you for free, that you're figuring out how close are you to being infinitely wealthy. And if you've got some distance to go, if you're young, give yourself some grace, celebrate that you're probably far ahead of the game just by virtue of being in this room. One of the wisest things I ever did when I was young is I just surrounded myself by old, successful people. And I was like a software engineer, and I managed engineers, but I would go out and I'd do IT support for like attorneys and doctors and accountants and stuff, just to like learn how they thought and stuff. And I noticed that they all owned real estate. And I remember one of my clients called me in. He's like, Nick, I can't find this email. It was crazy that this was like a good use of my time, but it gave me a chance to chat with him. And he said, Nick, I'm looking for these I'm looking for these receipts for golf carts. And I'm like, okay. And I'm searching through his email, and I'm like, yeah, this is kind of a weird looking email. It says that you bought 500 golf carts. Paul, his name's Paul Quigley. He's this really sweet old man and like brilliant attorney and real estate investor. And he's like, yeah, I need 500 golf carts for the country club. And I'm like, what do you mean for the country club? Are you like helping out at the country club or something? And he's like, no, I bought the country club. And at the time, I mean, I was making like 50,000 a year, and the idea of like one day going to a country club, like being invited as a guest, seemed appealing. The idea of being a member of a country club was seemed out of reach financially. And then the notion that a person could purchase a country club, it just seemed farcical to me. And I'm like, Paul, you have to walk me through this. How does this work? And he said, well, Nick, businesses, they get into trouble sometimes. And, a country club, it can get into trouble too. And I'm like, yeah. Well, if a business is in trouble, you could probably buy it for pennies on the dollar. Or if there's a real estate property that a business revolves around, you could probably buy that real estate property for pennies on the dollar. I'm like, oh, okay, I'm following you. He's an attorney, so he asks kind of questions that are leading. And he says, Nick, I play golf a lot, right? And I'm like, yeah. And he's like, well, wouldn't it feel good to play golf at the country club I owned? I'm like, I guess so. That does sound pretty baller. I don't like that. And and he said, so I got together with my buddies, and we pooled our money. We bought the country club, and then we invited all friends, and we fixed the finances, and we got some new golf carts, and now it's doing great. And I get to play golf at the country club I own every day. Doesn't that sound nice? Like, yeah, Paul, that sounds nice. File that away. And now we're buying the office building that we work in every day. But, I'm following in Paul's footsteps, and all that just because I chose to surround myself with very successful people who were many, many, many steps ahead of me at a very young age. And I just somehow had this like knowledge filed away in the back of my brain that, okay, so you can just buy things and places and businesses, and it's a thing you can do. Like right in front of us is a restaurant that just went out of business. I was saying we were like Jason's Deli. There's no Jason's Deli in Rochester, and I really want to buy that building and put a Jason's Deli in it so we can just like walk out of our office and go enjoy a healthy lunch. And that's Paul Quigley. Just we surrounded ourselves with very successful people. So hopefully that's a fun story to have a hard close on here. Next we have just a test to figure out if you're paying attention here. So go ahead and put in the chat. These are common questions that people ask us. They ask us with insulting bewilderment. Why do we live in the Midwest? So anyone want to put in the chat why Elaine and I choose to live in the Midwest?
We are proud Midwesterners.
Mm-hmm. Oh, well, thank you, Mario. We appreciate that.
Blue
Blue
Ocean
Ocean Market. Someone's
That's
been
right.
paying attention.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
That's why that's a big part of the reason we invest in Rochester and in Tacoma, is because we said we know we want to concentrate our wealth, and we want to have a market where we can become sort of a big fish very quickly. And it wasn't, many years. It took us about 7 years to become the largest housing provider
7 years.
in all 7 years. It happens over and over and over
Yep.
in all of southeastern Minnesota. We largely live in the Midwest because of the cost of living, because we want to keep our burn rate as low as possible so that we can use as much of our active income to invest to generate passive income. And if our burn rate's low, then we don't have to have as much passive income to fuel our lifestyle, to be in that infinite wealth cycle. And so we live in the Midwest where the cost of living is relatively low. Rochester is kind of a weird one in the Midwest because wages are so high because of Mayo Clinic. And then we travel to the rest of the world and the rest of the country, the higher cost of living areas, and then come home to our lower cost of living area. Maybe you don't want to relocate to the Midwest. It's wonderful here. And if you're thinking about it, I encourage you to.
Not all of you, but some of you, the cool ones.
The lesson there is, how can you lower your burn rate? Right? That needs to be a critical question from a place of empowerment, from a place of joy. How can you lower your burn rate? That kind of gives away the next one. Why do you live in a relatively modest house? It has been a repeated story our entire lives that people will know us for a long time, and then they'll come to our house, whatever house we've had. We've had 3 houses in the time that we've been married, and they sort of walk in and they're like, oh, okay, interesting. but it gives us freedom, right? And we live in what I consider to be a very nice home, but we knew we never wanted to have shackles. We knew we never wanted to create a situation where we had to work a lot in order to pay for our housing, to pay for all of the upkeep and the things that go into housing. And so we created a situation where our burn rate was lower, right? I hope you're seeing this pattern. Net worth divided by burn rate minus passive income, that's your loop to infinite wealth. What of those three variables can you optimize? With every question you're thinking about all of the financial transactions in your life, you should be thinking about optimizing those three variables. Um, Jenny says, I always said I had our dream mortgage, even if it wasn't my dream house. Yes, I love that. I've never heard that before. I am going to be using that in the future. I always had our dream mortgage, even if it wasn't my dream house. That's
Mhm.
good. That's
Yep.
deep.
Yep. Why don't you own a plane? Anyone want to take a shot at why we don't own a
Or
plane?
why we don't own a boat.
Yeah, well, the plane's a little different than the boat, but yeah. Anyone want to take a shot at that? We have some lively chat here, so maybe I shouldn't pause here. So in the case of a plane, we've done that math many times over, and even though we travel a lot, like it's cheaper just to fly on Delta. It's more available, and it seems like aviation is a fun hobby, but like an obscenely expensive one. We've seen a lot of people who are mildly financially devastated by that, and then the boat, there's no real utility to the boat. Like it's so much fun to go out on someone else's boat. Then I can enjoy the boat and I don't have to take care of the boat or pay for the boat. And even though these would not be huge, financial burdens for us, relatively speaking, it's a principled thing. We're focused on the thing that matters, and each of these kind of just like frankly unnecessary extravagances, unless they brought us like extraordinary joy, all they would do is take us further away from wealth, from
Mhm,
security, from
mhm.
freedom.
We absolutely don't want you to hear, like, if you have a boat and you love it and you're out on the lake or whatever, and that brings you joy and you're with your kids and you do your best thinking out there and you love the fresh air, like, have your boat and love it. We want you to have that boat. But when we looked at, our life, like those things didn't add a lot of value to us. So thinking about the things that really move the needle for freedoms in your life, that's why we spent the majority of our time together this evening talking about the freedoms, encouraging you to think about the freedoms, right? For you, the boat might represent time freedom.
Mm-hmm.
It might represent
Yep.
relationship freedom, right? Have the boat. But if there are things in your life that are soaking up your burn rate that aren't adding tremendous amount of value to your life, can you get rid of them so that you can use that active income to invest, to generate passive income, so that that formula then leads to more of all of the freedoms in your life. That's the moral of the story here.
Yep. Next is why do we share an office with Keller Williams? So it seems kind of crazy. We have officed out of a Keller Williams brokerage for the entire existence of our business. Our business is 10 or 100 times or 1,000 times larger than like this Keller Williams franchise that we office out of. But at the end of the day, it's an incredible win-win relationship. And I meant to talk about this a little bit more in the vignette about buying the building. So you don't know the answer to this question. But we get a free front desk person. We get a free gigantic copier with like $1,000 a month copier contract. We get a break room that's stocked with coffee. There's all these carrying costs that we don't carry. The lights and the air conditioning in this office are paid for by us. And granted, there's not a shiny A-class building that has our sign on it. But is that something that would really serve us? Or do we really just need to keep our overheads low and be plugged into a group of people that are constantly doing deals, that are constantly connecting us with leaders in our industry? And so people often, when they come to visit us, be like, okay, so where are you? I'm pulling up Keller Williams. We're like, yeah, we're inside the Keller Williams brokerage with 7 people to an office. That like we're here to focus on what matters, and we know that having a kind of ego extravagance office is something that would take us away from wealth for our company.
And Gary Keller says that if you cast a vision big enough, people can see their visions inside of your vision.
Mm-hmm.
And Gary has cast such a large vision for the real estate industry that we will do anything to build our vision inside of his vision. And so we stay here because that represents a relationship for us that's really valuable to us, because he's 1,000, a million steps ahead of us on the journey in real estate investing and leading large companies and creating a legacy. And if we can be in any sort of proximity to him, maybe we soak up even just a little bit of it, right?
Mhm.
And that's why, right? So instead of creating our own brokerage where we could be, kind of on our own and have maybe some more autonomy, we get relationship freedom and then all of the economic things that Nick talked about. So, what are the relationships that you need to be in? Who are the people that when you look at them, you say, I want to learn whatever it is that they have to teach me. And every minute I spend with them is a minute that vastly enriches my life. Who are those people? How can you improve and increase your time with them?
So we'll try to batch a few of these here. Go ahead and pepper into chat. Why is it that we seem to be able to do it all? Or why is it that we're still working? Why are we on this webinar, right? Like we theoretically don't need to make money or spend our time doing this. We could be sitting on a beach somewhere. So why are we choosing to do that? And why do we have so many darn kids? Go ahead and put a answer or two into chat if you would like. Maybe we got a bonus question here at the end. So
You heard the story
mhm.
about when I had that sort of week-long scare with, potentially a very life-limiting illness. And that was really the time for me when it really crystallized in my mind that the most important thing in my life was that I wanted to have children. I didn't necessarily think at that point that I wanted to have as many children as we've ended up with. And now I want to have even more children. And it's really because I see that that's we have kind of our home front and that's the impact that we create there, and then we have this external front, and that's the why we work. It's why we continue to grow our company, why we continue to work with passive investors, continue to build, continue to learn, to have impact, right? Very few humans want to reach financial freedom and then not work.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Think about all of the celebrities, well-paid athletes, well-paid business people, right? The people with the largest stores of wealth in the history of humanity, all of them kept working. Maybe they vastly changed how they were working and what they were doing, right? They really claimed their autonomy, they claimed their zone of genius and what made them very excited to get up in the morning and to serve that thing. But humans love to work. We love to create. We love to contribute. We love to grow. We love to expand. And when you have the financial freedom that creates the time freedom that you get to decide how you spend your time, then work becomes one of the greatest joys in life. It becomes the kids and the work are the reasons to wake up in the morning and all night because Elijah keeps us up all night.
We do it all for the integrated life. Like if we wanted to get up and do just public speaking, that would be so much less rewarding than speaking to y'all and helping to guide you on this journey. And once you have this thing, all you want to do is share it. That's the only thing that really motivates you. And so being able to double, triple, quadruple drip, it's so motivating to get up and lead the integrated life and do it all and to work. And then I had the bonus here. Why did you get fixed rate debt? So during the pandemic, about 97% of all multifamily transactions closed with variable rate debt. And it sure looked like you were going to be a genius getting, 2% variable rate debt instead of 3% fixed rate debt. But when we thought about it, we said, what really brings us closer to financial freedom? And we really like sleeping well at night and getting variable rate debt when rates were at an all-time low. It just seemed like something that wouldn't let us sleep well at night. If you're getting to financial freedom and you're doing it the right way, it should allow you to sleep very well at night. And so we just kind of, I don't know, we've just always used that litmus test, that razor to guide us. And it's helped us make, I mean, like our wealth is not a very sexy kind of wealth. Like with, I mean, it's kind of cool. We might actually buy two different apartment buildings tomorrow, 200 units across two different buildings. We've never had a double deal day like that before. That'd be pretty cool. So like that's kind of cool, but I don't know. It's not like we're movie stars or I don't know, Wall Street people wearing fancy suits or anything like that. But at the end of the day, we sit back and we think this is something that feels like it's going to bring us closer to real wealth, like multi-generational wealth, world-changing wealth, making the world a better place to live in the most tangible sense of the word. And so that North Star, it really guided us to getting fixed rate debt. And thank goodness we were the 7% of transactions that got fixed rate debt, not the 93% that got variable rate debt. That's why we're doing so well compared to our peers right now. So in all things, all these different, quality questions we throw at you, they can guide you. And that's just one example of that right there.
A way that I see that show up with many investors is, over the years, I've had, hundreds of investor calls, and they'll say, should I do active investing? Should I do passive investing? I'm not kind of sure, which path to take. And ultimately I'll say, what will allow you to sleep well at night?
Mm-hmm.
Right? Like that is such a high quality question. What will allow you to sleep well at night? If it's passive investing, because you know that you can keep yourself focused on your high earning profession, on your family, on your hobbies, on your time freedom, go that route. If it's active investing because you love the thrill of the chase, you love, putting a deal together, getting your hands dirty, you love, just being in the game of it, then do active investing. But whichever one will allow you to sleep better at night, that's probably the route you ought to go, because ultimately there's no amount of money that overcomes stress, right? There's no amount of money that overcomes the worry that keeps you up at night, that has you wondering, am I going to be okay? Is my family going to be okay? How am I going to fit this all in? I feel so stretched thin. I'm not sure what to do. And so as you're making investment decisions, as you're thinking about how you want to generate your passive income, a really high quality question to keep coming home to is, what will allow me to sleep well at night? What's your risk tolerance? What's your time horizon? What are the things that you enjoy? What are the things that you don't enjoy? And we've just kind of kept coming back to that question. And I would say now, maybe when we were in more of like the earlier phase of building our wealth, that question was like in the matrix, but maybe a little more deprioritized, because we were willing to just do a lot of really hard work for long periods of time, and just willing to just kind of like brute force our way through it. And now that's probably like the most important question, right? If something interferes with the freedom that we feel in our hearts, it's not worth it. It could make us hundreds of millions of dollars. But if it interferes with how we feel in our hearts, how we sleep at night, how we're able to relate to our children and spend our time, it's not worth it. And I encourage you to keep that litmus test as you're thinking about building your investment portfolio.
Yeah. Edith had a great question here, but isn't the truth minimal gains from passive investing versus active hands-on investing? Excellent question. It's all situational. It depends on you and what your talents are, and what your opportunity cost is. So what you could have done with your time. So the example that I shared earlier was, if you're like a high paid professional, if you're a physician or something like that, it may not make sense for you to personally manage your real estate portfolio. It probably doesn't make sense because your time is so valuable. You could probably earn more money by practicing medicine or doing a moonlighting shift or something like that, and then hiring, a property manager, or investing passively. But if you have like a lower income job, if you're a bank teller or something like that, well, you might have a much higher ROI, a much higher return on your time by self-managing those properties. So it depends on you and kind of your temperament. Some people, they really like to have that Tamagotchi in a virtuous way. They like to really be involved. And if that gives you joy and fulfillment, then you're going to be more successful with it because it gives you joy and fulfillment. And if that saps your joy, and as a person who owns a property management company with getting close to 2,000 units now, I can tell you that property management can sap your joy pretty easily. There's a lot of low energy situations you need to manage on a daily basis. So it may make sense to hire that out. So it all is situational. It depends on what you want to do and what the unique talents and gifts and advantages are that you have.
Mm-hmm. When I think about that question, I really think about the person who is running the passive investment, i.e., the general partner, should have so much experience, so many connections, so many economies of scale, so much experience, wisdom, that they are able to bring so much value to the transaction that whatever fees or splits they have, they've made more value in the transaction than what they're taking out of the transaction. And then when you couple that with a calculation on return on time, it's often the case that passive investing is better. We have a whole guide for a real estate decision-making tree. Maybe Rachel can put that in the replay email. And I also think that this could be like its own whole presentation. So I'm just going to take 45 seconds here. I don't think it needs to be an identity declaration, right? Sometimes people like I'm an active investor, I'm a passive investor, and I really encourage people to think of, for this dollar in this moment, and then sort of go down the tree. Is it active? Is it passive? If it's passive, what type of passive? If it's active, what type of active? If it's active, are you having a third-party property manager? Are you self-managing? Is it long-term? Is it short-term? Right? There's many, many forks in that decision-making tree, and it's for this dollar in this moment, right? If you're in a time where maybe you just had a baby and you can't imagine taking another thing onto your to-do list, that might be a time where passive makes a lot of sense. If you're at a place in your life where you're like, man, I'm itchy for a new hobby. I want to learn a new skill set. I want to do a little bit of physical labor. I want to paint some things. I want to do some renovations. I want to build some teams. That might make sense to go active. Sometimes people go active for a while and then it kind of gets to where it snowballs and it's taking up so much of their time that it's no longer a hobby. It's kind of a drag. And then they shift over to passive. Sometimes people do passive for a while. They learn the lingo, they learn how real estate is operated, they get a little itch for active, and then they move over to active investing. So, really, a high quality phrase to think of is for this dollar in this time, how do I want to invest? And staying away from feeling like it needs to be like an identity declaration of I am an active investor or I am a passive investor. We are multifaceted human beings, and you can do both, right? We run an extraordinarily large active portfolio, and yet we also invest passively in other real estate opportunities. So that's my little spiel there, and we'll put that real estate investing decision guide in our replay email.
And we've got a few upcoming events here on Friday, April 18th. We've got our Q1 2025 performance report, and performance is good. The State of the Union is strong. We have got a 1.7%, 1.7% of our portfolio in Rochester is vacant and can be leased, which is a fantastic number to have right now compared to the industry. Things are going quite well. On Monday, May 12th, we're going to have our May Community Power Hour. So that's this time that we're sharing together right now. Do we have our topic picked out for that Power Hour? I think
I don't believe so.
Okay, well, we'll have something to share with you that'll be fun and exciting then. You can subscribe to all those things at blackswancalendar.com. I certainly encourage you to do so. We mentioned Real Estate Real Life at the top of the hour. We'll mention it again now. You can get a $300 discount on registration with the early bird discount. Just use early bird. We've already got, I think, over 50 people signed up for the conference. So it's going to be much bigger than it was last year. Last year, I think we had 66 at the end. So, I mean, we might have 100 people or more. Cannot wait to see what it looks like. We are already planning some really fun content this year. Go to RERL2025.com.
Yeah, we really think of Real Estate Real Life as a weekend where exactly that. You learn a ton about real estate, you get hands-on experience with real estate, you really feel like you understand real estate in a way that's very hard to learn from listening to a podcast or doing hotel ballroom type content. And then also a huge focus on the real life part, right? The point of building a big business, of building a big portfolio, is to build an even bigger life, and moving the needle on that part makes everything worth it. And so we kind of bring all of that together into this really immersive sort of whole person experience in Real Estate Real Life. People describe it as unlike any other conference they've been to. We get out in a bus, we go do property tours. Many people have told me, like, I wasn't sure about that. You know, as I heard about that, like, I wasn't sure I would enjoy that. And yet it ends up being their favorite thing because it's so different than any other conference they've been to. And we just, as humans, we just learn so much by seeing, touching, and feeling. Many of the people who come are active investors. And they love to see, where their dollars are being placed and the good that they're creating in the world. Many people come as part of their due diligence as they're considering investing with us. And then many people come that haven't invested with us, don't intend to invest with us. Maybe they're building a portfolio of their own and they really want to get that mindset piece and that growth and that network and learn about real estate operations so that that can guide the real estate decisions that they're making in their life. So it's really kind of covers all three of those various audiences. And it is just a joy. This will be our 4th year. The very first day is our anniversary of when we met. So that's pretty exciting. And then we have an optional VIP day on Monday, September 15th. So we basically kind of put a whole second conference together in one day for the people that want to play full out, that want to stay that extra day, have a smaller, intimate group, dive even deeper into the mindset pieces, dive even deeper into the real estate content. We would love to have you at Real Estate Real Life this year. We do have a virtual option as well. Unfortunately, that doesn't cover the property tours, but it would cover all of the teaching content that we're putting together. We have an amazing roster of speakers. All of that information is available at RERL2025.com, and you can use the code EARLYBIRD for 300 off, and you can use that code for any of the ticket types. So for general admission, for VIP, or for virtual, which brings that virtual cost quite low. And I think you'll easily get a 100x ROI on your ticket.
Yeah.
So excited about it.
And then finally, we've got the Secure Freedom Fund. So Edith was just asking questions about getting involved in one of our opportunities. This is one that's like the one that's on deck. So you can get on that wait list right now, and it will be available for funding probably the next couple of weeks, depending on there's a couple deals we're imminently getting under contract that we're very excited about. And yeah, Edith had a question about past performance. You can go to blackswanteam.com/performance. If anyone has any questions about Secure Freedom Fund, we're always happy to answer those questions. Maybe you could answer a question or two now if you'd like. But you can just go to securefreedomfund.com. It is a very simple investment opportunity. You get a 10% fixed rate of return. In terms of our track record on that particular vehicle, we've offered different opportunities like this over the years. We've never had a Reg D 506C offering that we've been able to publicly advertise to accredited investors. This is the first time we've been able to talk about it in a webinar, but we've raised tens of millions of dollars through different 10% fixed vehicles like this over the years since 2018. We've never failed to make an anticipated payment to an investor, never lost money on a real estate deal, never failed to return capital as expected. So I'd say we have an impeccable track record in all of our real estate investments and with vehicles like this in particular. How long is the 10% rate good for? From William there. Great question. So at different times, we've sometimes offered a lower rate. Right now, we're offering a 10% fixed rate. As long as you keep your investment in the fund, you keep that 10% rate. So let's say that at some point 5 years from now it was 9% or something like that. You would keep your 10% as long as you remain in the fund. So you can request redemption anytime. It's easy to get your money in, easy to get your money out. It's only a $25,000 minimum, so much more accessible than many of our other investment opportunities. And so people see it as just a great opportunity to get a very high fixed rate of return. It's kind of a good bookend to our 50-50 split deal. Question, are there any fees? There are absolutely no fees whatsoever. So if you were to put in $100,000 today, in a couple weeks when we open it for funding, if you wanted to get monthly cash flow payments, you would get exactly 10% per year or $833 per month. If you wanted it to accrue and compound, you'd get a 10.47% rate of return just in year one alone. It would compound from there because it compounds every month. So it's a really powerful compounding with absolutely no fees whatsoever. There's no acquisition fee or asset management fee. A lot of pref equity funds and debt funds, they have redemption fees or liquidation fees, or they have seasoning periods. It's very common. It's not a fee, but it's very common when you put your money in, it kind of sits for 60 or 90 days before it starts accruing a return until it goes into a deal. With our vehicle, you start getting a return day one, and you continue to accrue a return until the day that you get your money back. So there's no kind of hidden windows where you aren't accruing a return with our vehicle. We love transparency and no fees. That's something we trade on. So these are lots of great questions here.
They are good questions. Maybe we should do a whole Secure Freedom webinar.
we have not gotten around to doing a Secure Freedom webinar. It's a very simple vehicle. We definitely need to do a Secure Freedom webinar here. Yeah, William you've been in the fund for a few months. Fantastic, and love watching the compounding. Lena asked if there are any tax benefits. Yes, there are. So most investment opportunities like this, where you get a high fixed rate of return, like a bond or a CD or a REIT, a debt fund, a preferred equity fund, something of that nature, you're almost always paid on a 1099, a 1099I or 1099C, where you're looking at like an ordinary income tax rate, like a 40% plus tax rate. The way we've structured this, you get paid on a K1, not on a 1099, and we can't promise what the exact numbers will end up being. We don't have complete control over it. Depends on what assets come into the fund, what schedule and everything, how cost segregation reports work out. But our goal is to allocate depreciation to you that essentially adds up to what your returns would be in that year. It's easier if you do the accrue and compound option. That's what probably 90% people do is the accrue and compound option. So you get to defer those taxes until you exit the fund when you request redemption. And so let's say you stay in for a few years, you request redemption 3 years from now. The goal is to push as much of that as possible, potentially all of it, into a long-term capital gains tax rate. So you'd recapture that depreciation that you accrued along the way, And then instead of paying, a 40% plus tax rate along the way, you'd pay half of that tax rate, long-term capital gains tax rate at the end. So there's pretty massive tax advantages to investing in that fund versus other fixed income vehicles. How long do you have to wait to get your money back if you request it? Excellent question. So almost all debt funds, pref equity funds, they typically have like a lock-in or lock-up period where you cannot get your money out at all for like the first 2 or 3 years. In our case, you can request your money anytime. If you request your money in the first year, you'll forfeit your return, your interest, but you can get your principal back anytime. And then after that first year, you can get your principal and return back anytime. Most funds, they typically have certain redemption windows. So you can only request money right after a capital event or in the first quarter or the first month of the quarter or something of that nature. We allow you to request redemption anytime. And then most funds, they'll say there's like a 90-day redemption time frame between when you request redemption and when you actually get your money back. But there's typically like a little asterisk somewhere in there. There's always an asterisk that says your redemption is fulfilled based on capital availability. We believe in radical transparency. So we're going to get you your money back as soon as we can. If it's a smaller amount of money, if it's 100 grand, we can typically get that money back to you in like a week. And in the past, we've never failed to make a redemption request very promptly. If you have $1 million in the fund, if you give us a heads up, that would be super helpful for both of us, I'm sure. So in the past, we've never failed to make a redemption request, and we're typically able to make those redemption requests very promptly. Man, this is really good. I'm glad we're recording this stuff here.
Yeah. The next question is the fund evergreen? So the fund is not evergreen. We will raise $100 million and we'll deploy that into probably about 400 or 500 million of assets, just depending on the leverage that we're able to get. And then we will close the fund. So it's a large fund. I imagine we will raise for this fund probably for the next 5 or 6 years. We'll raise kind of smaller amounts as we get more and more acquisitions into the fund, but it is not an evergreen fund. And that's important because of regulatory compliance and those sorts of things. Evergreen funds are extraordinarily complex. And so we have a fund that ends. One of the questions is the 10% guaranteed? So guaranteed is a really special word in investing that generally is it's a worse practice to use the word guaranteed. This is an investment. All investment has risk. Some of those risks might be not being able to make the pref equity payment, loss of capital, delay in payments, those sorts of things, the typical risks that would come with real estate investing. So it's a 10% fixed rate of return, which means you can, calculate out what your return will be, but it is an equity investment, which means we are using these dollars to acquire actual real estate. The fund will own real estate, and all investing does have risk. So read the PPM to understand all of the potential risks that are involved. As Nick mentioned, our track record, we've never failed to make a payment. We've never failed to honor a redemption request. We've never had to make a capital call. We've never lost money on any of our real estate transactions. So that's our track record. And past behavior is what's most likely to predict future behavior. But the word guaranteed is not a word that's used generally in investment. That's a good question, though. That one often comes up.
Yeah, guaranteed doubles your tax rate also. So that's an important concept.
Yes, that's very true. Yep. Guaranteed returns go into a different type of taxation. How long has the fund been open? So this particular fund has just been kind of quietly open since early December. It has just a few acquisitions in it. We just raise the money that we need for that acquisition, and then we close it. And then right now we have one acquisition under contract, and then we're hoping to get 2 more under contract tomorrow. That's why we've been waiting to open the fund. So we will open it, raise what we need for those acquisitions, and then close it. And then later in the year, as we get more things under contract, we'll open it again, raise whatever we need for those acquisitions, and close it. So it will open and close over time until we raise that entire 100 million for all of those acquisitions. You receive K1s in early spring of each year. So the deadline for K1s is March 15th. And we have all of the K1s out for 2024 tax year. That's what I've been. You should actually high five me. I've been working doggedly
well done,
on getting all of our K1s out.
I deeply appreciate your work on that.
So we generally have a track record of getting our K1s out in a very timely fashion. Can you use money from a solo 401k account? Yes, you can.
A solo self-directed 401k. Yes.
Correct. Yep. Yes. And also a self-directed IRA Because this is an equity fund and the properties do have mortgages on them, an IRA would be subject to UBIT and UDFI. Lots of people,
Depending on what your accountant says.
yep, I was just say lots of people interpret that a little bit differently. So talk with your own accountant and make a decision. Lots of people still do choose to invest with an IRA in either our numbered funds, Fund 1, 2, 3, 4, or the Secure Freedom Fund, but that is something that you would want to be aware of. A 401k doesn't have that sort of regulation in the tax code.
Any equity on top of the 10% return? Nope, there's no upside or downside beyond that. It's easy to get in, easy to get out. So your typical preferred equity fund, very similar to any REIT, pref equity fund, or debt fund in that regard. When the fund closes, do you get your money and interest back, or does it stay invested? So this is kind of calling back to that question about an evergreen fund. So it doesn't close in that we would like liquidate all the assets or anything like that. So you can request redemption anytime, but the goal is not necessarily that the vehicle would grow infinitely large for the infinite future, because that does have very significant regulatory compliance things for us. So you can think of it as behaving a little bit like an evergreen fund, but as a closed-ended fund. So at no point would the fund close and your money would be lost or anything of that nature.
Eventually we will liquidate everything, probably in, say a 20 or a 25-year time frame. And then at that point, we would return any investor capital plus any of the returns that they had accrued. But that's a long time off. And then in the meantime, investors choose personally when they want to come in or out of the fund.
If you invest more money, do you get a higher fixed rate of return? If so, is the 25K investment level eligible for a 10% fixed rate of return? So the short answer is everybody gets the same rate of return at this time. At some point in the future, we may have tranches different, and we have different share classes built into the fund so that different investment amounts can get a different rate of return, as is often the case in other vehicles. At this time, we really want to just kind of grow our investor base, though. So we deliberately made it a very low entry point with a very high rate of return compared to what you might get somewhere else. You might get maybe 6 or 7 or 8% with a small investment amount in other vehicles. With just a $25,000 investment, but we're giving you the full kind of 10.47% fixed rate return if you do 25,000 day one with the accrue and compound option. In the future, there could be a difference in rate depending on the amount that you invest.
Once you've invested, like let's say you come in at 25,000 at 10%, you keep that 10% the entire time that you're in the fund. Even if, say, a few years from now, the market's a little bit different, and maybe for a lower investment amount, maybe we're offering a 7% rate of return, you would not like convert down into that 7% rate of return. You would stay at the 10% as you signed the original PPM. So you retain that the entire time that you're in the fund. It would just be for new dollars or new investments that are coming into the fund. Because the fund will be raising capital for many years, we needed to have that flexibility that if let's say interest rates go way up to 15%, well, then a 10% rate of return wouldn't be attractive. So we would need to raise the rate, or if rates go down, we would need to lower the rate. So we have that flexibility. But once you sign the PPM and you purchase your shares, your rate stays the entire time.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Can a cash balance plan invest in the fund? Most likely, I don't see why it wouldn't be able to. There could be a few items there we need to dig into. But for the most part, it's rare for someone to not be able to invest in our funds the way they're set up. You guys are so amazing. So grateful for all that you do. That's not a question, but I just wanted to read it out loud anyway. Thank you, Victoria. We love you too.
The question is, are your numbered funds equity funds? So that would be Black Swan Real Estate Fund 1, 2, 3, and 4. Yes, those are equity funds. All of our funds are equity funds. You mentioned possibly opening the fund again later in the year. If I invest now, am I able to invest again every time the fund opens? Yes. So one of the things that I think is really beautiful about this fund is it's very personalizable to the investor. Mm-hmm. So there's a $25,000 minimum. You can choose to invest more. You can add to it over time. You can take away from it over time. When you're ready for your entire redemption, you can request your redemption. You can elect whether you would like to receive monthly distributions or allow it to compound. You can switch that. Maybe you do compounding for a while and then you cut back on work and you want to increase the passive income that's coming into your personal bank account. And so you could, just send us a note. We'll change the paperwork. We'll switch you over to monthly or vice versa. So you can really customize it to your own needs. And each time we open the fund, when we have a new acquisition and we're raising for that particular acquisition, we will first open it to investors who are currently in the fund to see if they would like to add dollars. Once you're in at 25,000, you just need to add in $1,000 increments. You don't need to add in, say, $25,000 increments. And then we would open it to our wait list, and then we would open it to our broader community.
Yep.
Very good.
So that was very lively there at the end.
Yeah,
I'm glad
you
everyone
guys were
was hanging with us.
quiet. My hope is that the chat was quiet because all of you were writing diligently in your journals about your dreams and your impact and the relationships that you want in your life and all of those things, and that you woke up to talk about investing. Very excited about the Secure Freedom Fund. Again, you can go over to securefreedomfund.com. You can read the PPM and the operating agreement, run that with your advisors, whoever's important in your life, so that when we open the wait list, if you want to join, you feel ready to sign.
We do suspect it'll probably fill pretty quickly when we open up this next round.
Yeah.
We'll have more opportunity later in the year, but if you want to get in now, you'll probably need to move very quickly when we open it this next round because there's a fair amount of capital on the wait list already.
Right there at securefreedomfund.com is the deal deck. So everything that we just went over here is there in writing. You can see all the pictures, all the graphs, everything. Those are the official documents for the fund. So take a look at those. Make sure you understand everything. There's also the link to block a time on either of our calendars if you have any questions, want to clarify anything. And then also you can put your name on the wait list. So that's, you go into the InvestNext portal and you do a soft commit. There's no legal obligation or anything like that. That just gets you on that second tier of learning about when we open it. So we first open it to people who are already in the fund, then we open it to the wait list, then we open it to the general public. And because each time we open it, we'll have, relatively smaller raises, right? So the 3 acquisitions that we have 1 under contract, we're hoping to get 2 more under contract. We'll need to raise about 7 or maybe 8 million for that. I expect that will probably raise in just a few days, and then we'll close the fund. And then let's say later in the summer, we get a $15 million apartment building under contract. Maybe we need to raise 4 million for that. We would raise 4 million, and then we would close it. So I expect that the windows where it's open will generally be fairly short. And so that's the benefit of being on the wait list, is that you'll know in advance when those windows are coming and can plan around that.
Lots of great questions.
Yeah.
Well, thank you all. We hope that you got a lot of value out of our time together tonight. We tried to make this emotionally impactful and interactive, give you guys some free tools, make this kind of a perennial content that
I pushed a weird button. That's why I made that weird face. Sorry, guys.
Perennial content you can use over and over again. If people are watching the replay here, we hope that you're getting a lot of value out of this too. You've seen why we love doing this so much. We love the impact that we're able to create. We have enough, and we want that cup to run over and to share that with, this is our Sabbath here. We love being able to share that with you. So thank you all so much. We really appreciate you sharing your time with us this evening.
Go out and create an amazing life. Love you guys. See you next month.